The deed fell out of Walter's Bible at 4:17 on a Thursday afternoon, landed face up on the kitchen floor, and introduced Martha Hale to a place her husband had owned for 16 years. She stood over it with the Bible still open in her hands. Rain ticked against the window above the sink. On the table behind her lay the 30-day notice Daniel had delivered that morning, along with a yellow legal pad on which Martha had begun listing apartments she could not afford. The paper on the floor was cream-colored, folded twice and worn soft at the edges from being used as a bookmark. Across the top, in block letters, it said, "Warranty Deed." Below that was Walter's full name. Below his name were words Martha read 3 times before they arranged themselves into meaning. Cedar Wake Inn, western shore of Lake Maren, 12 guest rooms, associated structures, lawn and lake frontage. Martha lowered the Bible to the counter. Her hands, which had measured Walter's medicine without spilling a drop even on the worst nights, had begun to shake. Walter had told her everything cost too much: dental work, a new water heater, the motel bookkeeping course she had wanted to take online. He had let her count grocery receipts down to the penny while this sat inside his Bible. What kind of man hid an inn from his wife? And why had he left the proof where she would find it only after she no longer had a home? That morning, Daniel had arrived carrying a lemon pound cake from the grocery store and a leather folder that matched his shoes. The cake had been Walter's favorite, though Walter had been dead 11 days and could no longer appreciate the gesture. Daniel set it on the kitchen counter with both hands, careful not to disturb the sympathy cards propped against the toaster. "I didn't know if you'd eaten," he said. "I had oatmeal. Oatmeal isn't much. It was enough oatmeal." Daniel looked around the kitchen as if someone might have changed it since the funeral. At 43, he had Walter's height and Walter's habit of drawing his lips inward before saying something unpleasant. He wore a charcoal overcoat beaded with rain. He had not removed it. Martha poured him coffee anyway. She moved automatically through the room she had used for 15 years. Walter's mug was still in the dish rack, blue with a chipped rim. Martha passed over it and took down the plain white one Daniel used when he visited. 6 visits during Walter's last year, and she could still remember which mug he preferred. "You still take it black?" "Yes. Thank you." He sat at the table. The leather folder remained beneath his hand. Martha took the chair opposite him. She had learned during Walter's illness that bad news did not improve while a person stood waiting for it. Daniel drank, winced because it was hot, and glanced toward the hallway. The hospital bed had been removed, but 2 pale rectangles remained on the hardwood where its wheels had protected the floor from sunlight. A basket of unopened wound dressings sat beside the coat closet. Martha had called the medical supplier twice about collecting them. The supplier kept telling her someone would call back. "I spoke with the insurance company," Daniel said, "and the county." "About what?" "The house." Martha waited. Daniel slid a stapled document from the folder and placed it on the table between them. He aligned its bottom edge with the grain of the wood. "The property taxes are due in January. The homeowner's policy renews before that. There are some things that have to be dealt with pretty quickly. I know when the taxes are due." He rubbed his thumb along the folder's brass corner. "They come to me. Why would they come to you?" Daniel looked at her then. Not angrily. That would have been easier. He looked embarrassed, which made Martha feel as though she had done something indecent by asking. "Dad transferred the house to me." A spoon slipped somewhere inside the dishwasher as the old machine settled. The small sound seemed to come from another house entirely. "What do you mean, transferred?" "The deed. He put it in my name several years ago." Martha did not touch the paper. "When?" "During the trouble with the home equity loan." "What trouble?" Daniel's gaze shifted to the sympathy cards. He was worried about keeping up. I helped him straighten it out. I kept the accounts. Not all of them, apparently. That landed between them. Daniel appeared to regret it, but not enough to take it back. Martha had paid the electric bill, the gas bill, the pharmacy statements, and every invoice that had arrived from the visiting nurse. Her pension check had gone into the joint account on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. When Walter became too weak to shower alone, she had bought a plastic chair at the drugstore and sawed 2 inches off its legs because the tub sloped. Daniel had never known about that. There were hundreds of things he had never known, because Martha had done them before anyone needed to ask. Your father signed away our house and neglected to mention it? It was his house before you married. I know when he bought it. I'm not trying to be cruel. No one ever is when they begin that way. Daniel sat back. The chair creaked under him. I covered what he owed, he said. He wanted the house protected. We agreed I'd handle the taxes and major expenses when the time came. Martha thought of the new furnace installed 4 winters ago. She had paid the contractor from the joint savings account. Walter had complained about the cost for weeks. What major expenses did you handle? Daniel's jaw tightened. That isn't the point. It is from this chair. He stood and carried his coffee to the sink. He rinsed the cup, which was more courtesy than Walter had usually managed, then placed it in the wrong side of the double basin. I have my own mortgage, he said. I can't keep paying insurance and taxes on a second property indefinitely. You haven't paid them yet. They're becoming my responsibility now. Then sell it to me. The words surprised both of them. Daniel turned from the sink. For an instant, his face softened. With what, Martha? She hated him for asking gently. Her savings amounted to a little over $18,000. She had a modest survivor's benefit coming once the paperwork cleared and a pension earned during 26 years of bookkeeping for the Briar Motor Lodge. Her monthly income could cover rent if the rent was low, heat if winter was kind, and groceries if she continued believing oatmeal was enough oatmeal. Daniel returned to the table but did not sit. I'm planning to list the house, he said, probably as is. The agent thinks it'll move faster before the holidays if we price it correctly. The funeral flowers haven't died yet. I know. The death certificates aren't even here. I know that too. But your agent has a price. I asked a question. That doesn't make me a monster. No, it makes you efficient. He flinched, and Martha saw that she had found the precise word he used privately to praise himself. Daniel opened the folder again. I'll pay for movers, and 6 months of storage if you need it. I mean that. Martha looked down at the document. It was not a formal eviction order, only a written notice stating that he intended to take possession of the house in 30 days. The sentences were polite. Polite sentences could remove a person just as completely as shouting. Where do you suggest I go? There are apartments near St. Agnes. I don't attend St. Agnes. I know, I meant the area. You meant the apartments for older people. They're regular apartments, with emergency cords in the bathrooms. Daniel exhaled through his nose. You've had a hard year. A place with less upkeep might be good. I am 68, Daniel, not an opened carton of milk. To her annoyance, his mouth twitched. For half a second, he looked like the younger man who once brought Walter a second-hand fishing boat that sank at the launch ramp. Martha had laughed so hard she had needed to sit on the dock. Then the moment passed. I didn't make Dad transfer the house, he said, but you're choosing what happens now. What would you have me do? Count something besides money. A flush rose above his collar. That's not fair. I came every time he asked. He stopped asking when asking became humiliating. And you think that was my fault? No. I think you benefited from it. Daniel closed the folder. He paced once to the doorway and back, stepping around the pale marks left by the hospital bed. He was my father, he said. You act like I didn't lose anyone. Martha looked at him carefully. His eyes were dry, but the skin beneath them was gray with fatigue. Walter had been difficult long before he became ill. Daniel had spent most of his adulthood wanting approval from a man who rationed it as though kindness might spoil him. Martha knew that. She also knew grief did not make Daniel's paper disappear. I don't think you lost nothing, she said. I think you've decided I count as part of what you inherited. His face closed. He collected his gloves from the table. At the door, he paused and looked toward the hallway again. I can come Sunday for Dad's clothes. No, Martha, I will pack them. You may tell me what you want before I donate anything. I don't want you doing all that alone. You want me out in 30 days, but you're worried packing will tire me?" He opened the door. Cold rain breathed into the kitchen. "I'll call tomorrow," he said. "Send me a copy of the deed." "The house deed?" "Yes." He nodded once. Then he left without taking the pound cake. For an hour, Martha did nothing. She sat at the table while rain ran down the glass and the refrigerator clicked on and off. At noon, she cut a slice of the cake, ate 2 bites, and wrapped the rest. At 12:30, she telephoned 3 apartment buildings. One had an 11-month waiting list. One required an income she did not have. The third offered a studio above a laundromat for more than half her monthly pension. At 1:15, she opened her bank statements. At 2, she found a package of Walter's peppermints in the pocket of his brown cardigan and cried so suddenly that she had to sit on the bedroom floor. The tears angered her, not because Walter did not deserve them, because he had left her with too many kinds of grief, and she could not tell which one she was crying for. By 4, she had filled 3 cardboard boxes. Daniel would receive Walter's watch, his fishing reels, the framed photograph of the boat that sank, and the wool cap he wore even indoors. Martha kept the cardigan. She told herself it was because the donation center would not want clothing that smelled faintly of antiseptic. The Bible had been on Walter's nightstand throughout his illness. He had not read it often, but he liked it near him. Its black cover was cracked, and his name was stamped in fading gold at the lower right corner. Martha carried it to the kitchen because the light was better there. She meant to check for family photographs before placing it in Daniel's box. When she turned it upside down, the folded deed fell out. Now, with the document spread beside Daniel's notice, she found a recording stamp dated June 18, 2009. Walter's signature crossed the bottom in the broad, impatient hand that had become a trembling scratch in his final year. She read the property description without understanding most of it. Lot lines, shoreline measurements, easements. One phrase kept pulling her eyes back. Cedar Wake Inn. Martha lifted the phone and searched for the county number printed beside the recording stamp. The courthouse was nearly closed, and she expected a recording. Instead, a weary woman answered. After Martha explained, there was a pause. "Do you have the document number?" the woman asked. Martha read it. Keys clicked at the other end. "Yes," the woman said at last. "That instrument is in our records." Martha gripped the edge of the table. "So my husband owned an inn?" "I can confirm what the deed says. I can't tell you the current estate status or what interest you may have. You'll need an attorney. I don't have an attorney. I can give you the number for Ruth Calder. She handles probate locally." Martha wrote the number on Daniel's 30-day notice because it was the first blank paper within reach. Ruth answered on the 4th ring. She listened without interrupting, then asked Martha to photograph every page of the deed and send it to her. 10 minutes later, she called back. "The deed is genuine and recorded," Ruth said. "But I need you to hear the next part clearly. This does not mean the inn belongs to you." Martha looked at Walter's Bible, still open on the counter. "Then who does it belong to?" "At this moment," Ruth said, "a dead man's unsettled estate. And from what I'm seeing in the county records, Mrs. Hale, he left you considerably more trouble than one folded piece of paper can explain." "Before you call anyone else," Ruth said, "make copies. Put the original somewhere dry and secure, not back in the Bible." Martha looked at the open book. "That was not my filing system. I assumed it was your husband's." "It was. Then we've already identified one weakness in it." Despite herself, Martha nearly smiled. Ruth's voice had the calm, unhurried weight of someone accustomed to being telephoned by people whose dead relatives had left behind surprises. She asked when Walter died, whether he had a will, whether any probate had been opened, and whether Martha knew of other property held only in his name. "There's the house," Martha said, "except apparently there isn't." Ruth was silent for a moment. "Explain that." By the time Martha finished, the kitchen had darkened around her. She switched on the light above the stove and watched it flicker twice before holding steady. "Do you have a copy of the house deed?" Ruth asked. "My stepson is sending one. Has he asked you to sign anything?" "No." "Good. Don't." He gave me a notice to leave. "Did you sign that?" "No." "Better." Martha ran one finger down the edge of Daniel's paper. "Can he make me go?" "I can't answer without reviewing the transfer and the dates. I also can't promise that the answer will be the one you want. For tonight, I can tell you that a typed notice does not require you to pack your toothbrush before bed. I already packed his fishing reels. Those can probably survive the night." Ruth offered her an appointment at 1 the next afternoon. Her office was in Lake Maren, 2 blocks from the county courthouse. Martha wrote the address beneath the attorney's phone number. "The inn is there, too?" she asked. "Outside town, about 9 miles west, then north along the shore road. Is it still operating?" Another brief pause. "No." The answer was simple. Its tone was not. "How long?" "The license appears to have lapsed 6 years ago. I'm only looking at public records, Mrs. Hale. I don't yet know the physical condition. Are the taxes paid?" "Not currently." Martha closed her eyes. "How not currently?" "That's a question for tomorrow. I was a bookkeeper for 26 years. You don't need to protect me from a number. I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting myself from giving you an incomplete one." That Martha respected. Ruth told her to bring the original deed, Walter's death information, marriage certificate, any will she had, recent bank statements, and every document Daniel had provided. Martha repeated the list back. "And bring a checkbook," Ruth said. "I charge for this. Finally, something in this conversation I understand." After they hung up, Martha slid the deed into a clear plastic sleeve left from Walter's medical records. She put the sleeve inside a blue zippered pouch and placed the pouch in the locked metal box where she kept passports, vehicle titles, and the ring her mother had left her. Then she stood with the little key in her palm, considering where to hide the box. The absurdity struck her. It was Daniel's house. If his document was valid, every closet and floorboard belonged to him, but the objects inside them did not become his, simply because he had a key. She carried the box to her station wagon and locked it beneath the cargo floor beside the spare tire. Daniel called at 7. "I sent the deed," he said. "Did you get the email?" "I'll check. I also sent a few apartment listings." "That was efficient of you." He let the comment pass. "One has a first-floor unit available next month. Does it have room for my furniture?" "Some of it." Martha sat in Walter's chair. The cushion bore a permanent hollow shaped by a man who would never sit there again. "What happens to the rest? We'll figure that out." "Who is we?" "Martha, please." She heard traffic behind him and the rhythmic click of his turn signal. Daniel made many of his difficult calls from the car when a rival could end them. "Did your father ever mention Lake Maren?" she asked. The clicking continued. "Lake Maren?" "Yes. We went there a few times when I was young." "Why? Did he have family there?" "His parents had some old place. A lodge, maybe. I barely remember it." "Did you ever go inside?" "I told you. I barely remember." His impatience came too quickly. Martha wondered whether the name had disturbed something he did not want disturbed. "What was it called?" "I don't know. Cedar something." "Cedar Wake?" The turn signal stopped. "Maybe. Why are you asking?" Martha looked toward the counter. The Bible was closed now. Without the deed inside, it did not look altered. "I found the name in his things." "What things?" "Paper." "What kind of paper?" "You're driving." "So?" "So you should pay attention to the road." "I'm pulling over." "Don't. Call me tomorrow. Martha." She ended the call. Her heart was beating too hard for so small an act. She expected him to call again immediately. He did not. The next morning, Martha dressed as though she were going to work. Dark trousers, her moss green cardigan, a pale blouse, and brown walking shoes sturdy enough for rain. The weather report promised more of it by afternoon. She carried her faded navy raincoat over one arm. She packed bank statements, certificates, Walter's unsigned draft of a will from 9 years earlier, and the valid will he had signed 3 years after that. The valid version was plain and nearly useless. It named Martha to receive his personal effects and referred the rest to whatever the law required. No inn appeared on the attached property list. Neither did the house transfer. Walter had always hated updating paperwork. He had not minded creating it for other people to clean up. The drive north took just over 2 hours. Farmland gave way to darker woods, long, wet stretches of pine and bare maple, and small towns organized around gas stations and church steeples. Martha kept the radio off. She wanted to think, but her mind refused the invitation. It supplied disconnected details instead. Walter asking her to find his glasses while they rested on his head. Walter saying they could not afford a weekend away. Walter closing his Bible whenever she entered the room. Ruth Calder's office occupied the second floor of a narrow brick building between a pharmacy and a store that sold fishing tackle, snowmobile parts, and homemade fudge. Ruth herself was 59, compact and straight-backed, with short brown hair turning white at the temples. She wore reading glasses on a red cord and kept a ceramic duck full of paper clips on her desk. "You're earlier than I expected," she said. "I left room for getting lost. Did you?" "Twice." Ruth took the blue pouch, removed the deed, and examined each page. She did not gasp or raise her eyebrows. She compared the document to a printout from the county register, then placed both side by side. "This is the same instrument," she said. "Recorded June 18, 2009. Walter Hale took title as sole owner, so he owned it. He held recorded title. That's the beginning of the question, not the end." Ruth showed her a sheet containing columns of figures. Property taxes were unpaid for 3 years. Penalties had accumulated. An old contractor's lien remained of record, though Ruth did not yet know whether the underlying debt had been paid and the release merely neglected. There may be utility balances, environmental concerns, insurance problems, code issues, or other claims, Ruth said. "I am not saying there are. I'm saying we check." Martha studied the tax total. It was less than the value of a house and more than her savings could bear without pain. Why hasn't the county taken it? The process takes time. There were partial payments. The last was 18 months ago. From Walter? We'll have to trace it. Martha hated the thought of tracing her husband through canceled checks and receipts, but not as much as she hated guessing. Ruth examined the will, asked when Martha and Walter had married, and made notes concerning the house transfer. She explained that title, marital interests, probate rights, debts, and distribution did not always line up neatly. Daniel was Walter's son from his first marriage. Martha was the surviving spouse. Nobody could simply point to the inn and claim it without opening the estate, notifying interested parties, identifying debts, and obtaining legal authority. "Can Daniel sell it?" Martha asked. "Not today." "Can I?" "No." "Can I enter it?" "Not yet. What can I do?" "Authorize me to begin checking the records. Gather your financial documents. Don't remove anything from the property. Don't hire anyone. Don't promise anyone anything. That sounds very much like doing nothing. It is discipline doing nothing. Lawyers charge extra for the discipline." Ruth's retainer was enough to make Martha's stomach tighten. She wrote the check anyway. "What happens if the inn is worth less than it owes?" Martha asked. "Then discovering it may prove expensive without proving useful. And if it's worth more, then everyone's interest will sharpen. Daniel's, among others." Martha slipped her checkbook back into her purse. "He already has the house. That may matter morally. Probate is going to ask what matters legally." On her way out, Ruth advised her not to drive onto the property until they confirmed there was no unsafe condition or objection from the county. Looking from the public road was another matter. Martha intended to return home. Instead, she stopped at the cafe across from the courthouse and ordered coffee she did not want. The woman behind the counter had dark curls pinned carelessly atop her head and flour on one sleeve. Her name tag said Nina. "Passing through?" Nina asked. "I'm looking for Cedar Wake Inn." The coffee stream missed the center of the cup for half a second. "Why?" "I'd like to see it." Nina set the pot down. It's closed, so I've heard. There's nothing out there but a wet building and worse weather. Is it still standing? Nina considered her. Depends what you mean by standing. Martha gave her name. Nina's expression changed slowly. Hale? My husband was Walter. The cafe seemed to grow quieter, though the only other customer was an older man reading a newspaper by the window. I worked at Cedar Wake, Nina said, years ago. Did you know Walter owned it? I knew Walter said he did. That distinction sounded uncomfortably like Ruth. Nina drew a small map on the back of a takeout menu. The gravel drive comes in from the west. Don't try reaching the dock from the road. You'd have to cross private land, and Bud Kerner enjoys yelling at strangers. Is he dangerous? No. He enjoys yelling too much to risk ending the conversation. Martha folded the map. If you go, Nina said, stay outside. The porch corner was leaking last I heard. How long ago was that? Long enough that you should take me seriously. By the time Martha reached the shore road, the rain had settled into a cold, steady sheet. Wind off Lake Maren worried at the bare branches and pushed leaves across the pavement in flattened clumps. The Cedar Wake sign leaned between two pines, its green lettering faded nearly to gray. Martha turned onto the gravel drive and followed it through wet woods until the trees opened. She stopped at the end of the drive. For several seconds, she remained behind the wheel. Then she put on her navy raincoat, stepped out, and took the deed from its plastic sleeve. The wind caught the paper at once. She steadied it with both hands against her chest. Across the wet lawn stood the inn, 2 stories of rain-dark cedar shingles, peeling green trim, a central stone entrance and shallow guest wings, bending around the lakeside lawn. Boards covered several windows, but the shape remained dignified beneath the neglect. The long eastern porch faced the gray water, one corner visibly sagging. Beyond it, Lake Maren disappeared into low cloud, and the dock reached into the rain like a line someone had begun and forgotten to finish. Martha's silver hair blew loose against her face. Water darkened her brown walking shoes. She studied the building without moving closer. Walter had known this view. He had stood somewhere on this property while she sat at home balancing their account to see whether they could replace the refrigerator. Grief rose first. Anger followed. Beneath both, unwelcome but unmistakable, came the smallest return of something she had not felt since Daniel placed the notice on her table. Choice. Martha tightened her hands around the deed. All right, Walter, she said into the rain. What exactly did you leave unfinished? A pickup truck appeared between the pines, moving slowly enough that Martha had time to wonder whether she was trespassing before it stopped behind her station wagon. The driver climbed out in a canvas work coat and pulled on a green cap against the rain. He was a broad-shouldered man near Martha's age, though he favored his left knee when he walked. He studied her, the deed in her hands, and the inn beyond her. You, Martha Hale? That depends on who's asking. Owen Price. He waited, perhaps expecting the name to mean something. Nina called me, he added. Said Walter Hale's widow was headed out here alone. She works quickly. She worries quickly. It saves time. Owen stopped several feet away, giving Martha and her suspicion room. Rain ran from the bill of his cap. His gray beard was trimmed close except for one rebellious patch under his chin. Do you own this property? Martha asked. No. Does Nina? No. Then why are you here? To keep you from walking onto that porch. Martha looked at the sagging corner. I wasn't planning to. Good. I was considering it. That's usually what people say after they decide not to. Owen gestured toward the deed. Put that away before the lake gets it. Wind comes around the south wing hard enough to steal a roof shingle. It won't feel guilty about paper. Martha slid the deed back into its plastic sleeve and tucked it beneath her raincoat. Owen turned toward Cedar Wake but did not cross the lawn. You worked here? She asked. Maintenance. On and off for 22 years. Mostly on until it closed. Why did it close? Same reason most places close. Too much going out, not enough coming in, and everybody thinking next season will apologize for the last one. Did Walter run it? Owen gave her a sideways glance. That's a generous word. What word would you use? Owned. The distinction sounded familiar. He came up, Owen said. Walked around, made lists, paid some bills, promised others. The day-to-day was handled by a manager named Len Voss until Len had enough and moved south. When was Walter last here? You'd have to ask someone who kept better track. Did you know he was sick? I heard. From whom? Nina. Towns like this don't have secrets. We have delayed announcements. Martha stared at the inn. A loose section of gutter lifted and dropped with the wind, producing a dull metallic knock. My husband managed to keep one, she said. Owen did not offer comfort. He looked at the building with the tired attention of a man listening to machinery he once knew by sound. The porch corner is worse, he said. Maybe the sill, too. Can't tell from here. Roofline's not terrible, considering. Chimney flashing looks suspect. Boards over those windows went up after a storm broke glass, not because someone wanted the place to look haunted. That is oddly reassuring. It shouldn't be. Is it beyond repair? Everything's beyond repair if the budget's small enough. Martha almost laughed, but he was not joking. Ruth Calder says I can't enter yet. Ruth's right. You know her too. Everybody knows Ruth. Half the county owes her money, and the other half is afraid to ask if they do. Owen walked back toward his truck. When she says you can go in, call me. Don't bring a flashlight from a kitchen drawer. Bring boots, a proper respirator, and low expectations. I haven't hired you. I haven't agreed. He opened his door, then paused. Walter's sister still around? Elaine lives outside Green Bay. She knew this place better than Walter did. Why? She paid attention. Owen climbed into the truck, leaving Martha with the rain and the unsettling possibility that Walter's sister had known exactly what sat inside his Bible. Martha returned to Nina's cafe with water dripping from her coat hem. The newspaper reader was gone. Nina had turned half the chairs upside down on their tables and was wiping the counter. You sent a carpenter after me. I sent Owen. The carpenter part is incidental to his personality. He told me not to walk on the porch. Then my work here is done. Nina poured fresh coffee without asking and placed a thick white mug in front of Martha. This time Martha drank it. Did Elaine Mercer come here? She asked. Nina stopped wiping. Walter's sister? Yes. Sometimes. When? Over the years. While the inn was open and after. Did she know Walter owned it? Nina folded the cloth once, then again. That is a question for Elaine. I'm asking you, and I'm avoiding it. At least she was honest. Martha set the mug down. I was married to Walter for 15 years. Yesterday, I believed the largest thing he'd kept from me was a home equity problem. Today, I'm standing in a cafe 2 hours from my house, and strangers know more about my husband than I do. That doesn't make their knowledge yours to demand. The words stung. Nina saw it and softened, but did not withdraw them. I knew him as a man who appeared 3 or 4 times a year with another folder, she said. He'd sit at that end of the counter and talk about reopening the dining room for Sunday brunch. He'd ask what tourists complained about, what sheets lasted, whether people still wanted fireplaces. Then he'd drive away. Did he talk about me? Once. Martha waited. He said his wife was better with numbers than he was. That's all? That's all he said to me. The small acknowledgement hurt worse than silence. Walter had known exactly which part of her could have helped, and he had chosen not to ask. Nina rinsed a glass in the sink. For what it's worth, I don't think he was having a grand adventure behind your back. He looked miserable every time he came. It is not worth as much as you might think. No, Nina said. Probably not. Martha paid for the coffee despite Nina's protest and walked back into the rain. Daniel had left 4 messages by the time she reached the county highway. She listened to none of them until she stopped for gas. The first asked her to call. The second said he had checked the county website. In the third, his voice had tightened. Aunt Elaine says Cedar Wake belonged to the family. If you found a deed or something, I need to see it. The fourth was calmer, which meant Daniel had practiced it. Martha, I'm not accusing you of anything, but Dad had a son. You can't make decisions about family property without involving me. She put the phone face down on the passenger seat. When she reached the house, Daniel's car was parked at the curb. He stood beneath the porch roof with his hands in his coat pockets. The rain had stopped there, but water still dripped from the gutters Martha had paid to replace. You drove to Lake Maren, he said as she approached. You searched the county records. You wouldn't tell me what you found. I said I found paper. A deed is not just paper. This morning you believed one was. Daniel's cheeks colored. That's different. Yes, that one benefits you. He followed her inside. Martha removed her raincoat and hung it on the peg beside Walter's old jacket. She had forgotten to pack that one. Where is the deed? Daniel asked. Safe. I want to see it. It is a public record. I want to see what Dad kept. So did I, Daniel. He took off his coat but remained standing. Aunt Elaine says the inn was my grandparents' life. Dad bought out her share because he promised he'd keep it going. He didn't. I know that. Did you know he owned it? No, not for sure. I remembered the place, but I thought it had been sold when Grandma died. Martha believed him. Daniel was a poor liar when surprised. His left eyebrow lifted before the right, a trait Walter used to tease him about. Ruth Calder is opening probate, she said. You hired a lawyer without telling me? I hired a lawyer because you gave me 30 days to leave the house where I buried my husband. You didn't bury him in the house. You know what I mean. Daniel walked to the window. The backyard was scattered with yellow leaves Walter had planned to rake before he became too weak. Martha had raked them herself twice. More had fallen. If Cedar Wake is part of the estate, I have rights, he said. So do I. I'm his son. I'm aware. We met at the wedding. He turned, stung by the humor. I don't want this to become ugly. Then don't make it ugly. I'm trying to be practical. The property could be valuable. It has 3 years of unpaid taxes, an old lien, no active license, and rain entering at least one corner. Daniel blinked. You already know all that? I asked. What's the land worth? I don't know. Lakefront acreage up there isn't cheap. Neither is repairing a 12-room inn. Who said anything about repairing it? There it was. Daniel already saw the building flattened into a sale price. Martha had not decided she wanted Cedar Wake preserved, but his eagerness to erase it irritated her. What do you remember about the place? She asked. He hesitated. Not much. The stone fireplace, a hallway that smelled like pine cleaner, Grandpa yelling because I left a canoe paddle outside. Anything good? Daniel looked down at his hands. The cinnamon rolls. Martha waited for more, but he seemed embarrassed by the memory. I need a copy of whatever Ruth files, he said. Your lawyer can request it. I don't have a lawyer. You have an agent, a deed, and a leather folder. I assumed one came with the set. He left soon after, taking Walter's wool cap from the box by the stairs, but nothing else. At the door, he said, Don't spend money on that place until we know what it is. Martha thought of Ruth's retainer and did not answer. Elaine called before breakfast the next morning. I'm coming at 11, she said. That sounds less like a question than it should. We need to discuss Cedar Wake. We needed to discuss it while Walter was alive. Elaine arrived at 10:40 in a camel-colored coat, carrying no cake. At 71, she had the same pale eyes as her brother and none of his softness around the mouth. She entered without hugging Martha and stood in the living room among the packed boxes. You work fast, she said. I was given a deadline. Elaine's gaze moved over Walter's belongings. Daniel shouldn't have done that so soon. He shouldn't have done it at all. It's his house. So I keep hearing. Elaine sat on the sofa but kept her handbag on her lap. I signed my share of Cedar Wake over to Walter in 2009. He paid me less than it was worth because he said he would restore it. I believed him. You knew he still owned it. Yes, you knew I didn't. I suspected. Martha remained standing. At the funeral, you watched me choose the least expensive urn. You knew he owned lakefront property, and you said nothing. Elaine's fingers tightened around the handbag handles. He was ashamed, she said. By the end, Cedar Wake wasn't property to him. It was failure. That was his shame to carry. You helped him put it in my suitcase. Elaine looked toward the boxes, and for the first time since arriving, her face lost its practiced severity. I suppose I did, she said. The admission was so quiet, Martha almost missed it. Then Elaine straightened. But if you think finding that deed means you can walk in and claim what my family built, you're mistaken. Martha sat opposite her. I don't know whether I want the inn, she said. I know I'm going to learn what it costs. That appears to be more than anyone else was willing to do. Elaine held her gaze for a long moment. When Ruth gets you inside, she said at last, don't let the lobby fool you. The stone makes everything feel solid. What should I look at? The north guest wing. Why? Elaine looked toward the rain-streaked window, because that's where Cedar Wake began losing the argument with the lake. Elaine's eyes remained on the window as if Lake Maren lay beyond Martha's backyard instead of 2 hours north. The north wing was added in the 70s, she said. My father wanted more rooms before the new resort opened across the lake. He built fast and borrowed too much. The roof valley catches snow, the ground slopes badly, and wind drives rain against that side. Every few years, something rotted. And Walter bought it knowing that? Walter grew up believing knowledge and optimism were the same thing. Martha sat back. That sounds like him. It sounds like all the Mercer men. Walter was a Hale, only because our mother remarried and changed our names. Cedar Wake belonged to her parents first. My father married into it and then behaved as if he'd built the lake. Elaine's mouth tightened around the memory. For the first time, Martha saw something besides accusation in her. Elaine had not merely known the inn. She had been shaped by it. Why did you sell your share? Martha asked. Because I was 64, tired, and living 3 hours away. Because Walter swore he had a plan. Because we couldn't agree on anything after our mother died, and selling to him was the only way to stop discussing the same plumbing for another decade. Did he pay you? Yes. Less than I might have gotten elsewhere, but he paid what we agreed. Elaine looked directly at her. I'm not claiming he cheated me, only that I might. I don't know what you intend. Neither do I. Elaine released the handbag handles. Pale half-moons marked the skin where her nails had pressed. He wanted to reopen with 8 rooms, she said. The dining room on weekends, weddings on the lawn, canoes at the dock. He had brochures printed before he had the wiring inspected. That also sounds like him. They were beautiful brochures. I'm sure they were. A reluctant smile pulled at one corner of Elaine's mouth. It vanished quickly. Did he ever say why he didn't tell me? Martha asked. He said you had enough to worry about. That is what people say when they want credit for lying kindly. I told him that. When? After he got sick. The first time. Walter's first serious hospitalization had come 4 years ago, after he fainted in the bathroom and cracked 2 tiles with his shoulder. Martha had spent 3 nights sleeping upright in a vinyl chair beside his bed. Elaine had visited for 40 minutes with a potted orchid that died before Walter came home. You knew then, Martha said. Yes, and you left me to find out from a bookmark. I thought he would tell you. For 4 years? Elaine looked away. Martha wanted to dislike her cleanly. Elaine made it difficult by failing to defend herself. A knock sounded at the front door. Daniel entered after Martha called that it was open, stopped when he saw his aunt, and seemed briefly annoyed that 2 separate conversations had proceeded without him. Aunt Elaine. You're early, Elaine said. You said 11. I said I would be here at 11. Daniel checked his watch. It was 10 after. Martha stood. Would either of you like coffee, or are we rationing ordinary manners? Elaine accepted. Daniel did not. He had brought another folder, this one black plastic. He sat at the kitchen table while Martha measured coffee into the machine. Elaine followed, carrying her handbag as if someone might search it in the living room. I talked to a real estate agent who handles lake properties, Daniel said. Martha filled the reservoir. Of course you did. He can give us a rough estimate. From photographs? From acreage and shoreline. He hasn't seen the building. The building may not add value. Elaine made a small sound into her coffee cup. Daniel turned to her. You said the north wing was bad. I said it had problems. What's the difference? The difference is whether you've decided to demolish it before learning where the load-bearing walls are. I'm not demolishing anything. I'm trying to understand the options. You understand the option that produces a check, Martha said. And you understand what? You looked at it in the rain. I understand the county is owed money before any of us receive a nickel. The coffee maker hissed behind her. Daniel opened his folder and removed printed property listings, each featuring blue water and houses with walls of glass. Cedar Wake resembled none of them. Comparable parcels are selling for— Put those away, Elaine said. Daniel stared at her. This was your grandparents' inn, she continued. You can at least wait until someone has walked through it. You sold your share. Yes. I made one mistake at a time. Martha carried Elaine's coffee to the table. She felt the strange beginning of an alliance and distrusted it immediately. Her phone rang before Daniel could answer. Ruth said the probate petition had been filed and that the court had granted limited authority to secure, document, and inspect the property while the broader appointment proceeded. Nothing could be sold, removed, repaired, or contracted for beyond urgent preservation without further approval. I have arranged access for Monday morning, Ruth said. Mr. Price can meet you at 10. Owen. You've met? He prevented me from stepping on a porch. Then he has already provided value. After the call, Daniel insisted he would attend. Elaine said she was coming too. Martha did not invite either of them, but Ruth later confirmed they could be present if they followed instructions and signed the entry acknowledgement. Monday arrived with a hard white sky and patches of old rain frozen in the shaded ditches. Martha reached Cedar Wake first. Without the storm, the inn looked less dramatic and more tired. Peeling trim curled from the window frames. Pine needles clogged the gutters. A length of porch railing leaned inward, held by two spindles that appeared embarrassed by the responsibility. Owen parked beside her carrying two tool cases, a respirator, and a clipboard. Nina arrived next in a small hatchback with a thermos and a paper sack. I thought you ran a cafe, Martha said. I do. Who's running it? My cook. He believes this proves he should own the place. Does everyone in Lake Maren want property? Only when someone else is paying the taxes. Nina handed her the thermos. Daniel pulled in with Elaine 5 minutes later. He wore clean hiking boots that had never met mud. Elaine had changed into jeans and an old red wool jacket. Seeing it, Nina hugged her without asking. Elaine stiffened, then returned the embrace with one hand. You disappeared, Nina said. So did the business. That isn't the same. No, Elaine said, it isn't. A county employee met them with the entry packet and opened the west door. The key resisted until Owen lifted the handle and pushed with his shoulder. Cold, damp air moved out to meet them. The central lobby was smaller than Martha had imagined. A broad stone fireplace occupied one wall, its fieldstones dark with age, but apparently intact. 2 sofas sat beneath dust covers. The front desk remained cluttered with empty brochure racks and a brass bell filmed gray. Elaine reached toward the bell, stopped, and put her hand in her pocket. Don't touch surfaces until we know what we're dealing with, Owen said. It's dust, Owen. Dust has relatives. They wore respirators and signed the log. Owen checked the floor before allowing them farther inside. He moved patiently, pressing baseboards, shining his light beneath door frames, and making notes Martha could not read over his shoulder. The dining room faced east. Tall windows looked across the lawn to the lake, and even dirty glass could not ruin the view. Tables remained stacked against the wall. A faded mural of cedar trees covered one end, charming until Martha noticed water stains spreading behind the painted branches. Roof flashing, Owen said. Maybe. Could be around the upstairs window. Needs proper investigation. The commercial kitchen smelled of cold metal and old grease. Stainless steel work tables stood intact. The range, hood, walk-in cooler, and dish machine all remained, but Owen refused to speculate about whether any of them worked. Gas is off. Power is mostly off. Water's shut down, he said. Inspectors decide what can be used. Electrician, plumber, fire suppression, health department. Daniel opened the cooler door. A smell rolled out. Everyone stepped back. Nina pinched the front of her respirator. There. Now it's Cedar Wake. Even Elaine laughed, a short, surprised bark that echoed through the kitchen. The south guest wing was stale but largely dry. Dust lay thick over floral carpet. 4 ground-floor rooms held matching oak headboards, bedside lamps, and quilted bedspreads, sealed beneath plastic. In one room, a curtain rod had fallen. In another, a squirrel had converted an armchair into a personal warehouse of acorns. That chair belongs to him now, Owen said. Adverse possession. Daniel, who had spent the morning photographing damage, laughed before remembering he was trying not to enjoy himself. Upstairs, 2 more rooms showed only minor staining around windows. Martha wrote numbers in her notebook, separating what she saw from what she feared. Mattress replacement, flooring evaluation, paint, smoke alarms, window repair. No figures yet, only categories. Then they crossed the lobby toward the north wing. The smell changed before the temperature did. Owen stopped them at the corridor entrance. Paint bubbled along the baseboards. The carpet was dark near the exterior wall, though no fresh water stood on it. A ceiling panel sagged outside room 9. No one goes under that, he said. Elaine remained beside Martha. It was room 10 first. What was? The leak. Walter patched the ceiling and said he'd fixed it. Then it moved to 9. Leaks don't move, Owen said. Water does. He opened a service panel and shone his light inside. The wood beyond was blackened in places, pale in others where it had swollen. How bad? Daniel asked. Bad enough that we stopped guessing. Can it be repaired? Most things can. That doesn't mean they should be first. Owen marked the corridor with orange tape and barred entry to 4 rooms. He recommended structural assessment, moisture testing, roof evaluation, and professional remediation advice before anyone disturbed damaged material. Martha watched Daniel lower his phone. The lakefront listings no longer seemed to be speaking to him. They returned to the lobby and removed their respirators. Nina poured coffee into paper cups. Elaine stood near the stone fireplace, arms wrapped around herself. Owen spread a rough floor plan across the dusty front desk. You should know something before we go farther, he said to Martha. His tone made her set down her cup. The contractor's lien Ruth found is mine. Silence gathered around the desk. Daniel looked from Owen to Martha. You knew this? No. Owen kept his eyes on her. 6 years ago, a storm tore shingles off the north roof and damaged the porch. Walter authorized emergency work. My crew stabilized both. He paid part and promised the balance after spring. How much? Martha asked. $14,600 on the original invoice. The recorded figure includes filing costs. Ruth will verify everything. And you came out here without mentioning it. I came to keep you off an unsafe porch. Today I came to assess a building. The debt is separate. It doesn't feel separate from where I'm standing. No, Owen said. I imagine it doesn't. Daniel began closing his folder. This is exactly why we sell. Owen tapped the plan. The north wing is a serious problem. The porch needs work. The whole property needs licensed inspections. But the stone center is holding, and most of the south wing stayed dry. Martha looked down at the 6 rooms she had marked in her notebook. Are you saying the inn can be saved? I'm saying buildings don't care about the stories people tell around them. Owen folded the plan once. You might save part of it. Whether that saves you is a different estimate. You could have mentioned the lien in the rain, Martha said. Owen nodded. I could have. Or at the cafe? I wasn't at the cafe. Don't become technical with a bookkeeper. Nina coughed into her paper cup to disguise a laugh. Owen rested both hands on the dusty front desk. Walter called after the storm. said water was entering 4 rooms. My crew covered the roof, replaced damaged decking where we could, and braced the porch corner. He paid the material deposit. I paid 3 men for 2 weeks. Then he stopped answering. You filed the lien after 6 months and continued working here? Not after that. I checked the building when Nina told me something looked wrong. There's a difference. Daniel stepped closer. Will you release it if the estate pays the legitimate balance? So you want $14,000 from a dead man. Owen's expression did not change. I wanted $14,000 from a living man. This is what's left. Elaine set down her cup. Walter told me the storm repairs were handled. They were handled, Owen said. They weren't paid for. Martha looked at the 4 of them. Daniel angry because a debt reduced what he imagined inheriting. Elaine angry because Walter had deceived her too. Nina studying the floor, and Owen refusing to apologize for work that had probably kept the north wing attached. Ruth will review the invoice, Martha said. Until then, none of us are settling anything in a lobby without heat. That's reasonable, Owen said. Daniel made a dismissive sound. You don't get to call it reasonable. I wasn't asking permission. Martha closed her notebook. Is there more building to see? Owen took her through the old office behind the front desk. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall, their drawers swollen shut. A calendar from 6 years ago hung beside the telephone. Boxes labeled guest folios, payroll, and vendor invoices occupied 2 shelves. Martha stared at them. Business records, Nina said. Len kept everything. Did Walter? Walter kept brochures. A stack remained in a cabinet above the desk. Elaine had been right. They were beautiful. In the photograph, Cedar Wake glowed in summer sunlight, its green trim fresh, flower boxes spilling red geraniums along the porch. The lake was blue enough to look dishonest. Daniel held one beside the dirty window. If it looked like this again, it would be worth something. It was worth work when it looked like that, Nina said. People never put the laundry room in brochures. Martha opened one of the guest folio boxes without removing anything. Handwritten registration cards filled it in alphabetical order. She saw addresses from Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, and farther away. Several guests had returned each August for years. How full did you get? She asked Nina. July through early September? Most weekends, full. Weekdays depended on fishing, weather, and whether somebody held a reunion. May was thin. October could be lovely or empty. November through April, you prayed the pipes didn't freeze. Room rates, Nina told her. Martha wrote them down. Daniel watched. Why are you doing that? Because revenue matters. We're not reopening. We aren't doing anything yet. Owen led them through a narrow door south of the office into the former manager's quarters. It contained a sitting room, a bedroom barely large enough for a double bed, a bathroom, and a kitchenette with almond-colored appliances. A window above the sink angled toward the eastern lawn. Through bare branches, Martha could see the lake. The room smelled stale, but not moldy. A brown stain spread beneath the kitchenette sink. Supply line may have cracked, Owen said. System was winterized, but we don't turn on water until a plumber checks it. Wiring needs inspection. Bathroom floor feels soft near the tub. Nina leaned into the bedroom. Len said living beside the office meant nobody believed he slept. Did he live here alone? Martha asked. By preference. He had a lady friend in Duluth who visited when she felt like forgiving him. Elaine ran her fingers just above the mantel of a small electric fireplace without touching the dust. Our mother stayed here after her knees got bad. She said it was temporary. It lasted 7 years. Martha looked from the little bedroom to the lake. The apartment was plain, outdated, and probably expensive in ways the eye could not see. It was also larger than the studio above the laundromat. She wrote manager's quarters in her notebook and underlined it once. Outside, Daniel waited until Owen and Nina were speaking near the porch before approaching Martha. You're getting attached, he said. To a cracked supply line? You know what I mean. No. I know what you're afraid I mean. He glanced at Elaine, who stood on the lawn looking toward the dock. This property belonged to my family before you knew Dad. Your aunt sold it to him. Your father concealed it. Now it belongs to an estate. I grew up coming here. You barely remembered the name. That doesn't mean it meant nothing. Martha believed that too. His memory of cinnamon rolls had not sounded manufactured. Then help me understand what it is, she said. Not what you can sell it for, what it actually is. Daniel shoved his hands into his coat pockets. It's a failed business with water damage. That may be the answer, but you don't want it to be. I don't know what I want. You always know. No, Daniel. I usually know what has to be done. People mistake that for wanting it. He looked at her as if the difference had never occurred to him. On the drive home, Ruth called through the car's speaker. The lien records matched Owen's account closely enough to appear legitimate, though she was requesting the full invoice, payment history, and any correspondence. She had also reviewed the house deed Daniel sent Martha. It was transferred 5 years ago, Ruth said. Walter signed as grantor. Daniel took title. The document recites nominal consideration. Daniel says he covered a debt. He may have. I need records. The larger issue is that you were married at the time. You contributed to household expenses, and Wisconsin marital property questions are not answered by whichever name appears in the largest font. Does that mean the house is mine? No, you do enjoy that word. It keeps clients from buying curtains. Ruth asked for 5 years of joint bank statements, the furnace invoice, property tax records, and evidence of major repairs Martha had funded. Martha had most of them. She had saved every household statement because Walter discarded papers while they were still warm from the printer. Daniel gave me 30 days, she said. I will notify him that your occupancy and any marital claim must be handled through counsel. That won't create permanent housing for you, but it may slow his enthusiasm. I don't want to stay where I'm unwanted. That is an emotional decision. Yes. Those are allowed, Ruth said. Just don't confuse one with a legal concession. Daniel's real estate agent telephoned the next afternoon to schedule photographs of the house. The woman sounded cheerful and apologized 3 times for the timing without offering to change it. I understand this is difficult, she said. Do you? I've handled estate sales before. I nursed the owner in the downstairs room for 4 years. The cheerfulness disappeared. Mr. Hale told me the property was vacant. Martha looked around the kitchen. Her oatmeal bowl sat in the dish rack. Walter's jacket still hung by the door. He was mistaken. The photographs were postponed. Ruth's letter reached Daniel the same day. His response arrived by text. You didn't need to threaten me with a marital claim. Martha wrote back, you didn't need to tell an agent my home was empty. He did not answer. Over the following week, Cedar Wake collected professionals. A licensed electrician examined the main service and declared the panel obsolete but not catastrophic. Several south wing circuits would need replacement, and no guest room could be occupied until alarms, emergency lighting, and other safety requirements were met. A plumber found a cracked line in the manager's quarters, 2 failed shutoff valves, and fixtures old enough that parts would become an archaeological project. A roofing contractor confirmed active leakage near the dining room wall and serious deterioration over the north wing. The good news always arrived wearing boots muddy with bad news. The south wing had remained drier than expected. The stone lobby showed no obvious structural movement. The commercial kitchen's major equipment had not been tested, but its hood and stainless work surfaces were intact. The septic system and well still required separate evaluation. The porch corner needed immediate stabilization before winter. Martha sat through every inspection with her notebook. She did not climb ladders, open electrical panels, or crawl beneath floors. She asked what was required for safety, what could wait, what depended on another specialist, and what would become more expensive if ignored until spring. Owen answered carpentry questions and avoided discussing his lien, unless she raised it. On the 3rd visit, he handed her the original invoice and copies of 2 letters he had sent Walter. Ruth already has these, he said. Martha read the first letter standing beside her station wagon. It was courteous. The second was less courteous, but still professional. Walter had written one sentence at the bottom in blue ink: "I will settle after the season." There had been no season. Did he ever explain, she asked? He said money was tied up. In what? He didn't say. Martha folded the copy. That was his favorite location for money. Owen looked toward the inn. "I'm not proud I let it go as long as I did." "Why did you?" "Because I liked your husband once." The answer caught her. Once? People can disappoint you without becoming strangers. Martha thought of Walter's peppermints, the years beside his hospital bed, and the deeds soft from hiding in scripture. "No," she said. "Apparently they can't." At home, she built a spreadsheet at the kitchen table. One column said, "Required." Another said, "Can wait." A third said, "Walter's fantasy." And into it, she placed weddings, canoes, 12 restored rooms, decorative landscaping, and every costly idea that would not keep rain out or people safe. She modeled a sale, then a closure, then a limited reopening. 6 rooms in the dry wing, no north wing guests. Breakfast only if the kitchen passed inspection. No weddings, no boats. The manager's quarters repaired last, unless she needed somewhere to live. Nina gave her realistic seasonal occupancy. Owen supplied rough carpentry ranges with a warning that walls could conceal more. Ruth provided taxes, lien figures, probate costs, and estimated insurance requirements. Even the stripped-down total exceeded Martha's savings several times over. Daniel emailed the agent's estimate for the lakefront land and wrote, "This is the sensible path." Martha looked at the number, then at the 6-room model on her screen. The inn might earn enough to support itself if repairs stayed near the lower range, if the season was decent, if taxes could be scheduled, if the estate did not produce another debt, and if she accepted years of work instead of a clean check. It was a collection of dangerous ifs. She called Ruth. "What would have to happen," Martha asked, "if I wanted to keep only enough of Cedar Wake alive to make it pay for the rest?" Ruth was quiet for a moment. "First," she said, "we determine whether you can legally receive it. Then we find out what you would have to surrender to do so." "What would I surrender?" Martha asked. "Potential claims against the house, a share of other estate property, the right to insist Daniel share responsibility for Cedar Wake's debts, possibly the safer option of selling the inn and taking whatever portion the law assigns you, whatever portion that is. Yes, you still can't tell me. I can tell you what each side could argue. Walter's son is from a prior marriage. Walter acquired Cedar Wake after your marriage, but held title alone. Wisconsin's marital property rules may affect classification. The will does not distribute the real estate clearly. The house transfer raises separate questions. If you and Daniel fight every point, the attorneys will become the most predictable beneficiaries. Martha looked at her spreadsheet. "So we negotiate. We first get an independent appraisal. Then we negotiate with numbers instead of family mythology." Daniel objected to the appraiser Ruth recommended because the man had once valued a tavern Daniel considered criminally low. Ruth asked if the appraiser had been sued or disciplined. Daniel admitted he had not. "Then disappointment is not a credentialing issue," she said. Martha was beginning to understand why half the county feared asking Ruth whether they owed her money. The appraisal took 2 visits and arrived 9 days later. Cedar Wake's shoreline and acreage had value, but the building's condition, tax arrears, lien, uncertain utilities, demolition risk, and lack of an operating business cut deeply into it. A patient buyer might pay more. A quick sale before winter would invite offers designed around desperation. Daniel read the report in Ruth's conference room and pushed it away. "That can't be right." "It is an opinion," Ruth said. "A qualified one. The land alone should be worth more. Then a buyer may offer more." "You said there was interest?" "I said 2 brokers had asked whether the estate intended to list. Asking is free." Daniel had hired an attorney named Paul Givens, who wore rimless glasses and spoke so softly that everyone leaned toward him. Paul pointed out that selling would eliminate operational risk and produce a divisible asset. Divisible after taxes, lien resolution, closing costs, and claims, Ruth said. Of course. People use the word divisible as though it means generous. Paul smiled faintly. People use the word potential the same way. Martha watched the two lawyers and wondered whether they enjoyed each other. Elaine had no legal seat in the negotiation, but Daniel had brought her as family support. She sat beside him with both hands folded over her handbag. When Paul described Cedar Wake as an obsolete hospitality structure, Elaine's fingers began tapping. "It is an inn," she said. Paul turned politely. "In its licensed history, yes, it is still an inn. Not legally. Then neither are you a lawyer when you're asleep." Daniel closed his eyes. "Aunt Elaine, I'm only asking where definitions end." Martha bit the inside of her cheek. Ruth placed two possible paths on the table. The first was a sale, followed by payment of estate debts and distribution of what remained after legal questions were resolved or settled. The second was a family agreement under which Cedar Wake would be distributed to Martha with its burdens, while she released claims involving the house and most of Walter's remaining estate. Daniel would receive the small investment account and retain the house without challenge. Small was generous. Walter's investment account contained less than $6,000. Daniel looked at Martha. "You'd take all the inn debt?" Under that proposal, Ruth said, she would take the property subject to verified obligations and negotiate them after receiving authority. I asked her. Martha met his eyes. "I'm considering it. You don't have the money. I know what I have. You have $18,000. The room went still. Martha had given her bank statements to Ruth. She'd not given them to Daniel. "How do you know that?" she asked. Daniel's expression changed. "Dad told me. Before he died." "When?" "A few months ago." Walter had been unable to walk to the bathroom without help a few months ago, but he had known the balance of Martha's private savings. "What else did he tell you?" "That he was worried about you. He hid a property and signed away my home because he worried about me. He said you wouldn't understand the finances." Martha's chair scraped backward before she realized she had moved. Ruth placed one hand flat on the table. "We can take a break." "No," Martha said. "I would like Daniel to finish." Daniel looked miserable now. Good, she thought, and then hated herself for thinking it. "He said the house had become too much," Daniel said. "There was the credit line, medical bills, the furnace. I paid off $23,000. He transferred the deeds so I wouldn't lose what I put in. I paid for the furnace. He said you used joint money. Money is not less real because a wife earned it. I didn't say that. You accepted a house worth many times what you paid, then gave me 30 days. I thought Dad had nothing else. That made me cheaper to remove?" Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. "I didn't know what to do with the house. I still don't. The mortgage on my place went up. I have bills, and Dad told me this was how he wanted it handled. Your father told many people how things would be handled. He did very little handling." Elaine stared at the conference table. Paul suggested a break. This time, no one objected. Martha stood outside Ruth's building without her coat buttoned. The air had sharpened toward winter. Across the street, Nina's cafe windows glowed yellow. Daniel joined her. He stayed several feet away. "I shouldn't have mentioned your savings," he said. "You shouldn't know the balance." He was trying to plan. He was trying to control what happened after he could no longer answer for it. Daniel looked toward the courthouse. "You make it sound like I stole the house. Did you tell me about the transfer while he was alive?" "No." "Did you ask him whether I knew?" "He said you did." That stopped her. "Walter told you I knew?" Daniel nodded. "He said you both agreed it was the safest arrangement." The cold seemed to pass directly through Martha's cardigan. "Did you believe him?" "I wanted to. It was not an excuse. It was not nothing either." "Why?" she asked. "Because if you didn't know, then he was doing to you what he used to do to me." Martha waited. Daniel shoved his hands into his pockets. He'd decide something, tell each person a different version, then act hurt when we compared notes. She remembered vacations canceled for reasons that changed depending on the day. Money Walter said had been lent to Daniel, though Daniel once denied asking. Elaine's supposed criticism of Martha's housekeeping, which Elaine now claimed never to have made. They had all been living in separate rooms of the same argument. "You still gave me 30 days, Martha said. "Yes." "Walter did not make you do that." "No." Daniel looked at her then, and she saw no apology ready enough to be useful. "I'll extend it," he said. "I don't want an extension. Where will you go?" "I'll decide." "That's not practical." Martha buttoned her raincoat. "You have used that word past its limit." Nina found her a furnished room at the Pineway Motor Court on the north edge of Lake Maren. It had a kitchenette, a narrow bed, a table beneath the window, and brown carpet patterned to conceal crimes against housekeeping. The owner offered a weekly rate through spring. Martha inspected the mattress seams, the bathroom grout, and the smoke detector. "You really did work in motels," Nina said. "The remote control is sealed in plastic, but the ice bucket isn't. That tells me management fears the wrong thing. You'll take it? For 6 weeks. After that, I renegotiate." The owner, overhearing from the doorway, said, "The rate's already low. The shower drips, and your vacancy sign has been lit since Tuesday." He lowered the rate by $30 a week. Daniel paid for movers and 6 months of storage, as he had offered. Martha accepted without gratitude or guilt. The move belonged to his decision as much as hers. She sold the dining set because it would not fit in any room she could afford. A retired couple bought Walter's recliner and carried it out between them, while Martha stood in the hallway holding the package of peppermints she had found in his cardigan. She donated 3 boxes of clothes, kept the blue chipped mug, and gave Daniel the family photographs he requested. On her last morning in the house, she cleaned the refrigerator shelves. It was foolish labor in a place she was leaving, but she could not bear to abandon spilled jam to strangers. Daniel arrived before the movers finished. "You don't have to go today," he said. "Yes, I do. I told Paul we could pause the listing. A pause is not a home." He looked around the empty kitchen. Without the table, the room seemed smaller. The pale rectangles from Walter's hospital bed remained in the hallway. "I thought you'd fight for the house," Daniel said. "I might have, if it were only a house." "What does that mean?" "It means I have spent 15 years maintaining something that could be transferred without my knowledge. I don't want to spend another year proving I deserve to stand in it." At the front door, Martha took Walter's Bible from the last box and placed it in her shoulder bag. Daniel watched. "Was the deed really inside that?" he asked. "Yes." "Where?" "Proverbs." Daniel let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Dad never appreciated irony. No, he usually assigned it to other people. They stood facing each other in the stripped living room. "I don't want Cedar Wake," Daniel said. "Not the way you think. I want something from Dad's life that isn't a debt." Martha looked at the wool cap in his hand. He had brought it back, or perhaps never taken it from his car. "Then choose something that cannot send you an invoice," she said. At Pineway that night, she set Walter's Bible in the single bedside drawer. The empty space where the deed had rested was marked by a faint cream-colored line along the binding. Ruth called after 8. "Daniel has authorized Paul to explore the family agreement," she said. "Explore is not accept. I understand. If you take Cedar Wake, you may be giving up a credible claim involving the house. I understand that too. And the inn may fail." "Yes." Ruth was quiet. "Then why consider it?" Martha looked around the rented room. Everything in it was designed to be occupied briefly and forgotten quickly. "Because the house is a place where my work disappeared," she said. "At Cedar Wake, at least the bill is honest." The next morning, she authorized only the emergency porch bracing and temporary roof protection, with the advance documented as an estate expense. Owen gave her the smallest safe estimate, not the prettiest one. When she arrived, he had already set orange cones around the porch corner. Nina stood nearby with coffee and a ring of cleaning gloves hooked through her belt. "No cleaning yet," Martha said. "I know. No moving furniture. I know. No deciding what color the dining room should be." Nina looked offended. "It should remain the color it is. The color it is happens to be water stain. Then we'll call it Northern Taupe." Owen climbed down from his ladder and handed Martha a revised worksheet. She read every line before signing. Across the lawn, Cedar Wake remained closed, cold, and legally unsettled. Nothing about it belonged to her yet. But for the first time in years, Martha's name appeared beneath a decision Walter had not made for her. Owen read her signature, tore off the yellow copy, and handed it to her. "You understand, this is only stabilization. I understand every word on the page. I'm required to say it." "You've said it." Nina leaned toward him. "Say it once more. She enjoys it." Martha folded the copy and put it in her notebook. "If either of you wants coffee, I suggest you become useful." Nina saluted with 2 fingers. Owen returned to the ladder. The porch work took 2 days. Owen and another carpenter replaced the temporary brace, closed the worst opening, and redirected water away from the damaged corner. A roofing crew installed protection above the dining room and north wing. None of it improved Cedar Wake's appearance. Orange sheeting showed beneath the eaves, and new lumber stood out pale against the rain-dark cedar. "It looks injured," Elaine said when she arrived Thursday. "It is injured," Owen replied. Elaine had brought 2 cardboard boxes from her basement. One held old menus, rate cards, and photographs of the inn across 4 decades. The other contained table linens embroidered with green cedar branches. Nina lifted one cloth and sighed. "I ironed 600 miles of these." "You exaggerated then, too," Elaine said. "You counted then, too. I still count." Martha watched them sort the linens on a dining room table the county had authorized them to use for inventory. Many were stained. Several had been chewed at the edges. Nina separated them into keep, rags, and Elaine is being sentimental. Elaine moved 3 from the last pile back to keep. "We are not restoring a museum," Martha said. "I know. You have objected to throwing away a cracked sugar bowl, 11 mildew-spotted menus, and napkins that could carry disease between counties. They can be soaked." "In what regret?" Nina turned away, shoulders shaking. Elaine glared at Martha for 3 seconds, then laughed. It changed her entire face. "You would have terrified my mother," she said. "Your mother kept 27 tablecloths in a closed inn. She believed in preparedness. She was prepared to seat people during a linen emergency." The laughter faded gently, rather than stopping. Elaine folded the best cloth with careful hands. "I don't have money to put into this," she said. Martha had not asked, but she understood the confession beneath the statement. "I'm not asking you to. I could help with records, history, things Nina may not remember." "I remember plenty," Nina said. "You remember what guests complained about. That is hospitality history." Martha wrote both their names beneath sources on her inventory sheet. "Information is useful. Nostalgia is expensive. I'll tell you which one I need." Elaine nodded. The old guest records gave Martha enough to understand Cedar Wake's former rhythm. Repeat visitors had filled rooms in midsummer. Fishing weekends helped in May and September. Autumn color brought short, unpredictable bursts. Winter had never earned its heating bill. After the cafe closed each evening, Nina sat with Martha at a corner table and supplied costs the old ledgers could not. Laundry by the pound, housekeeping time per room, breakfast waste, reservation cancellations when rain settled over the lake for a week. "You cannot serve 6 kinds of muffin," Martha said. "People like choice. People say they like choice. Then everyone takes blueberry and bran becomes compost. Your vision of hospitality is severe. My vision has margins." Nina wanted to offer free housekeeping during the first month. Martha refused. "If work matters, it is paid. You may not have enough cash." Then I open later. "I will not build a business by asking women to donate the invisible part." Nina studied her over the rim of her mug. "Walter really was an idiot not to tell you." "Yes." "Sorry." "No. That one was correctly placed. The closed building insurance quote arrived Friday and consumed nearly twice the number Martha had allowed. The well test showed no contamination, but the pump was nearing the end of its expected life. The septic inspection found no immediate failure and no promise about how it would behave under 6 occupied rooms. Good news continued to require disclaimers. Ruth pursued the county about the taxes. Because the estate had begun formal administration and emergency preservation was underway, the county was willing to discuss a payment schedule rather than force an immediate sale. Current taxes would have to remain current. A substantial first payment would be required after distribution. Missing the agreement would revive every unpleasant consequence. Owen supplied his payment records. Walter had made 3 small payments on the storm invoice, then stopped. After reviewing the figures, Owen agreed to waive accumulated interest if the estate paid a portion when Cedar Wake transferred and the balance over 18 months, secured by the existing lien. "You don't have to do that," Martha told him outside the cafe. "No, why are you? I'd rather be paid slowly than argue quickly. That is not the whole answer." He adjusted his cap. "My crew did good work. If the place is sold for demolition, nobody remembers the roof held 6 extra winters. So this is sentiment. It's evidence." Martha held out her hand. "Ruth puts it in writing." Owen shook it. "I assumed she would." The first written offer for Cedar Wake came from a limited liability company based in Minneapolis. It was lower than the appraisal and subject to inspections, financing, environmental review, and the buyer's right to withdraw for nearly any reason capable of being typed. The offer described the inn as existing improvements of no assigned value. Daniel called it a way out. Martha called it permission to wait 3 months while a stranger decided whether their desperation was cheap enough. Ruth called it an offer. They met again in her conference room. Daniel and Paul sat on one side. Martha sat beside Ruth. Elaine remained in the waiting area by choice, saying she no longer wished to be mistaken for evidence. "The buyer may improve the number," Paul said. "Has the buyer improved it?" Ruth asked. "Not yet." Daniel looked at Martha. "If we reject this, we could get less in spring." "We could. The north wing could worsen." "Yes." "Then why won't you agree?" "Because I am offering you something cleaner." Her proposed settlement was printed in front of him. Daniel would keep the house without challenge, receive Walter's small investment account after expenses, and surrender any claim to Cedar Wake. Martha would receive the inn through probate, accept its verified debts, and release nearly every other estate claim. The tax plan and Owen's lien agreement would be conditions, not favors assumed on trust. Daniel tapped the page. "The house was already mine." "Then you're giving up nothing by securing it. I paid Dad's debt, and I paid household expenses for 15 years. We can spend 2 years asking a judge whose money mattered." Paul spoke softly. "Daniel, the marital property issue is not frivolous." Daniel stared at him. "You told me we had defenses." "We do. A defense is not a guarantee." "What does she get if the inn works?" Martha answered. "Work. You know what I mean. If it succeeds, I receive the benefit. If it fails, I receive that too. The property could become valuable. It already has value. It also has taxes, a lien, rotten wood, obsolete wiring, 6 dead winters, and a squirrel with a chair." Paul removed his glasses. Ruth looked down at her notes. Neither lawyer seemed willing to explain the squirrel. Daniel pushed back from the table. "You're doing this because I asked you to leave. I started looking because you asked me to leave. That's not the same?" "No. Revenge would be taking your house. This is choosing where I put the rest of my life." He stood and walked to the window. "What if you lose everything you have? Then at least I will have made the decision that lost it." "That sounds reckless. It sounds unfamiliar to you because Walter made so many decisions for both of us." Daniel turned. "You think I'm him?" "Sometimes." The word hurt him. Martha allowed it to remain. He sat again. Paul requested 10 minutes with his client. Martha and Ruth crossed the street to Nina's cafe, where Elaine waited at the counter with pies she had not ordered. "Well?" she asked. "Daniel is considering, meaning he's angry. He can do both." Elaine pushed the plate toward Martha. "Nina says this is apple. It has cranberries in it. We're not litigating the pie. I only want accurate disclosure." Martha took a bite. The cranberries were sharp enough to make her eyes water, but the crust was excellent. "If I get Cedar Wake," she said, "I'm selling the excess furniture and anything that cannot be used in 6 rooms." Elaine stiffened. "I will inventory it first. You may identify family items. You may not call every chair history. What about the dining room tables? There are 14. I need 6. You need more if people eat there." "They won't." "Not at first." Elaine looked genuinely stricken. "No dining room? Breakfast for registered guests if the kitchen passes? No public restaurant? No weddings? No Sunday brunch? That's barely an inn. It's exactly as much inn as the numbers can carry." Elaine looked down at her hands. Walter would hate that. Walter isn't paying. A moment passed, then Elaine nodded. 6 tables is still too many. When they returned, Daniel had signed nothing. He asked for a week to consider and ordered a copy of every supporting figure. Martha gave him the same spreadsheet she used, including the likely failure scenarios. He called 3 evenings later. "The roof estimate," he said. "Does that include the whole north wing?" "No. Temporary protection and the section over the dining room. The north wing stays closed. And the manager's apartment? Basic repair, if affordable. So you'd live there, eventually." There was a long silence. "I remember Grandma in that apartment," he said. "She kept hard candy in the drawer beside the fireplace. Elaine said she lived there. She let me ring the desk bell when no guests were around. That must have been a generous definition of no guests." He gave a quiet laugh. Then he said, "I'll agree if the taxes and lien are documented exactly the way Ruth described, and if you release the house claim completely. That is the proposal. You won't come back later and say I cheated you. I may say it at Thanksgiving. I won't say it in court. We don't have Thanksgiving. No, we have documents." Daniel signed the family agreement the following week. Martha signed last. Ruth reviewed every release allowed before allowing her pen near the paper. Once the court accepted the settlement, creditor notices ran their required course. The county approved its schedule. Owen executed the lien agreement. Insurance was bound. Estate expenses were accounted for. Nothing happened quickly, though every delay produced another bill that did. Snow covered the lawn at Cedar Wake before the probate order was entered. Martha was at Pineway when Ruth called her to the office. On Ruth's desk lay a certified order, the recorded distribution document, the tax agreement, and a ring holding 3 newly cut keys. Ruth placed her hand over the keys. "If I give you these, do you understand that you are not receiving a debt-free property, a licensed business, or permission to occupy unsafe rooms?" "Yes." "Do you understand the release involving the house is final?" "Yes." "Do you understand that ownership is not the same as solvency?" Painfully. Ruth moved her hand. Martha picked up the keys. They were ordinary hardware store keys, sharp at the edges and labeled West Office and Service. No music played. No one applauded. Her bank balance was smaller than it had been in October, and the first tax payment was due in 32 days. Martha closed her fingers around the keys. "What now?" Ruth asked. "Now," Martha said, "I sell 11 beds I cannot afford to make." The first tax payment removed a painful portion of Martha's savings before she sold a single bed. The county accepted the money without ceremony. Owen accepted the initial lien payment with a receipt already prepared. The insurance company accepted its premium and sent 12 pages describing the things it would not accept responsibility for. Martha filed everything in separate folders. Nina found a used furniture dealer willing to inspect Cedar Wake's surplus. He walked through the guest rooms, tapping oak headboards with one knuckle, lifting lamps to examine their cords, and speaking of solid furniture as though it had recently insulted him. "Hotel stuff is hard to move," he said. "It has moved you through 11 rooms without complaint. I mean resale." "I know what you mean." Your offer is still insulting. He offered $600 for everything. Martha showed him the door. Over the next 3 weekends, they sold furniture in smaller groups. Nina advertised through the cafe and local lodging association. A couple reopening a hunting lodge bought 4 oak bed frames and 8 nightstands. A restaurant owner took 5 dining tables after Martha insisted the chairs be included. 2 mismatched dressers went to a woman furnishing employee housing. The floral armchair in the squirrel's room was carried directly to a disposal trailer after Owen confirmed that its former owner had vacated. Elaine attended every sale. She objected to parting with a cedar chest from room 7, then bought it herself at the price Martha had written on the tag. "You don't have to pay for family furniture," Elaine said. "It is my furniture now." That sounded pointed. It was. Elaine wrote the check. The sales did not produce a rescue. After disposal fees, transport, and replacements needed elsewhere, the total covered part of the plumbing work and the first installment to Owen. Martha marked each dollar in her spreadsheet. She kept 6 matching oak headboards, 12 nightstands, the best dining tables, the brass desk bell, and enough usable lamps to start. All mattresses would be replaced. Nina agreed, though she mourned 3 quilts until Martha held one toward a window and sunlight passed through it. "That is not fabric," Martha said. "That is a memory with holes." The cost of reopening remained far beyond what selling furniture could solve. Martha met with 2 banks. The first loan officer listened for 15 minutes before recommending she sell the property. The second, at Lake Maren Community Bank, spent more than an hour challenging every assumption in her 6-room forecast. His name was Martin Cho, and he had the unnerving habit of going silent after Martha answered. He was 52, wore a burgundy tie with tiny trout on it, and had brought a copy of the appraisal covered in blue notes. "You have no recent operating history," he said. "The building has none. I have 26 years of bookkeeping records and a pension. You have hospitality accounting experience, not ownership experience. I also have 15 years of managing a household around chronic illness, but I left that off the resume because it didn't include a tax identification number." Martin's expression remained neutral. "How many employees?" "1 seasonal housekeeper to start, paid by the hour. I handle reservations, accounts, breakfast, and guest service. Maintenance is contracted." "At 68? Martha met his eyes. He lifted one hand. "That wasn't skepticism about your age. It was a question about workload and continuity. It sounded well disguised. Then I phrased it poorly." The apology disarmed her more than defensiveness would have. "I will not clean 6 rooms, cook breakfast, answer phones, keep books, and shovel snow alone," she said. "The model assumes paid help. It also assumes 6 rooms, not 12. The north wing remains closed. What happens if you reach only 40% of projected occupancy?" She showed him. "What if the pump fails?" She showed him the reserve line. "What if you cannot open by June?" Martha turned to another page. That scenario was uglier. Martin read for several minutes. "You haven't included a salary for yourself. I included owner draw beginning after the 2nd month of minimum cash coverage. That is not a salary. No, it is what the business can support. And if it supports nothing, I live on my pension and regret my choices in a room with a lake view." His mouth moved slightly. The bank would not finance a full renovation. It would consider a modest loan secured by Cedar Wake, released in stages against completed work, with Martha contributing her remaining savings and maintaining a cash reserve. The interest rate was higher than she wanted and lower than she feared. Approval required final contractor bids, proof of the tax arrangement, insurance, and a realistic path to occupancy approval. "Your collateral is stronger than your cash flow," Martin said. "That is a polite way to say the building is worth more dead than alive. It is a banking way to say I need both to improve." Martha left with more conditions than money, but not a refusal. Owen helped break the work into phases. He would repair exterior carpentry, replace damaged trim, and restore enough of the porch for safe access. A licensed electrician would upgrade the service and guest room circuits. A plumbing contractor would replace failed valves, repair the manager's quarters, and test every active line. Roofing work would focus on the dining room section and protecting the closed wing. The north corridor would require separation from occupied areas before inspectors would approve 6 guest rooms. "No one crosses into that wing," Martha said. "Fire doesn't read signs," Owen replied. "You need a rated barrier, not a rope and optimism." The barrier became another line in required. Work began under snow. Cedar Wake's west entrance filled each morning with boots, extension cords, rolled plans, and cups from Nina's cafe. Martha kept a sign-in sheet and collected certificates of insurance until Owen accused her of requiring more paperwork than the county. "The county doesn't have to pay the invoices," she said. He built temporary platforms where floors had to be opened and kept her away from active work areas. When she tried to carry removed carpet out of room 3, he took the role from her. "I can lift carpet." "I know. Then why are you taking it?" "Because there are tack strips under your end, and you're walking backward." Martha released it. "That is an acceptable reason." "Thank you. Don't enjoy it." Nina and Elaine cleaned only after rooms were cleared for them. Nina worked fast and talked constantly. Elaine worked slowly and uncovered objections. "This paint is too gray," Elaine said in room 2. "It's primer," Nina told her. "I'm expressing concern early." Martha entered carrying a box of outlet covers. "The final walls will be warm cream. That washes out in photographs. It reflects lake light and costs $19 less per gallon." Elaine considered this. Warm cream may photograph beautifully. In the old office, Martha organized 6 years of records into piles. Most were routine: unpaid utility bills, repair estimates, letters from vendors. Walter's printed reopening plans appeared in 3 versions, each more ambitious than the last. The final version included 12 renovated rooms, a dining room expansion, dock rentals, weddings, and a gift shop. Not one page contained a complete financing plan. Elaine found Martha reading it at the desk. "He showed me that," she said. "When?" "Before his first hospitalization." "What did you tell him?" "That it was too much." Martha looked up. "You told him?" "He accused me of never believing in him." That was his preferred response to arithmetic. Elaine sat in the guest chair. Dust rose from the cushion. "He said you would shut it down before he began." "I couldn't shut down what I didn't know existed." "I said that too." "But you still kept quiet." Elaine looked toward the office doorway. Beyond it, hammers sounded from the lobby. "He was my younger brother," she said. "Even when we were old, some part of me kept thinking I could give him one more chance to become the man he promised." Martha folded Walter's plan. "I did the same thing?" "No, you cared for him." "So did you, in your way." Elaine shook her head. "Care is not always noble," Martha said. "Sometimes it is doing the next necessary thing because you cannot bear what happens if you don't. Sometimes it lets another person avoid seeing the cost. Are you saying you shouldn't have cared for him?" "No. I'm saying I wish he had noticed it was not free." Elaine's eyes shone, but she blinked the moisture away. "He knew," she said. "Knowing privately is Walter's specialty." The bank approved the loan in conditional stages. Martha signed the documents at Martin's desk, reading each page while he waited. Cedar Wake secured the debt. If the business failed badly enough, the choice she had fought to make could still be taken from her. Her hand paused above the final signature. Martin noticed, "You can take another day." Would any number improve overnight? No. Then neither will my courage. She signed. The first draw paid deposits to the electrician, plumber, and roofing contractor. Martha's remaining savings funded mattresses, basic linens, and part of the manager's quarters work. She kept more cash in reserve than Owen liked and less than Martin preferred, which suggested she had found the correct amount. Then the plumber opened the bathroom wall in room 4. The old leak had not stayed inside the north wing. Water had traveled along a pipe chase and damaged framing between rooms 4 and 5. The wall looked clean from the guest side. Behind it, wood crumbled under a gloved hand. Owen called Martha before anyone proceeded. She stood in the doorway wearing a respirator, looking at the blackened studs. A remediation contractor would need to assess the material. Framing repairs would follow. Room 5's bathroom might also have to be opened. "How much?" she asked. "No honest number yet," Owen said. "I dislike that answer." "So do I. If we lose these rooms, I open with 4. Maybe. 4 rooms won't cover the debt payment at realistic occupancy." "I know." Martha returned to Pineway with photographs, notes, and no estimate. She spread the budget across the little table beneath the window. Snowplows passed on the highway, sending white light across the ceiling. At 10:30, someone knocked. Nina stood outside holding 2 covered plates. "I brought meatloaf. I'm not hungry. That's why I brought pie, too." Martha let her in. They sat on the edge of the bed because the table had disappeared beneath spreadsheets. Nina did not tell her everything would work out. She ate meatloaf and waited while Martha moved figures from one column to another. At midnight, Martha found a possible path. Room 6 upstairs had been excluded because its bathroom fixtures were obsolete and the window needed replacement. Repairing it would cost less than restoring rooms 4 and 5 immediately. If the fire plan allowed a revised occupied section, they could prepare rooms 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8 while sealing 4 and 5 with the damaged area. "It's still 6, Nina said, "if the inspector approves the layout, and if the upstairs plumbing behaves, and if the loan draw can be amended." Nina lifted her fork. "There's your favorite word." Martha looked at the rows of dangerous ifs. "No," she said. "My favorite word is paid." The inspector approved the revised plan in principle the next afternoon. Martin agreed to review the altered budget. Owen began pricing room 6. Nothing had been saved. Nothing had been lost. But Cedar Wake had delivered its first serious argument against Martha, and she had answered with a smaller floor plan instead of surrender. Martin reviewed the altered budget with the expression of a man being asked to approve surgery performed through a different incision. "You've moved money from porch finish work," he said. "The porch will be safe. It will not be beautiful, and from dining room paint. Guests can eat breakfast without admiring the mural. You reduce the opening cash reserve by 12%. Nina agreed to fewer paid hours before occupancy reaches target. Martin looked at Nina's signed employment projection. "You're hiring her before opening? For training, room setup, and booking procedures, not full-time. Have you run payroll before?" "I ran motel payroll for 19 years. He sat back. "You answer every question as if you resent its existence. I resent paying interest while answering it." The revised draw was approved after the remediation. Contractor confirmed that the damage could be isolated from the occupied section. Rooms 4 and 5 would remain closed. Their plumbing was capped, damaged materials removed under proper containment, and the corridor sealed according to the inspector's requirements. Owen built the separation wall with a local carpenter named Luis Ortega, a 36-year-old who asked precise questions and wrote measurements on his forearm. Owen made him erase them and use a notepad. "Skin sweats," Owen said. "Paper gets lost. My way has survived longer. Your way has knee braces." Martha left them to settle the future of carpentry without her. Room 6 received a new window, repaired plumbing, and enough electrical work to join rooms 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8 on the approved plan. The room numbers made no sense to anyone unfamiliar with the closed portions of the building, but renumbering would require replacing signs and confusing old records. "We can call them Birch, Pine, Cedar, Lake, Sky, and Regret," Nina suggested. "We will use numbers. Regret has a view. It also has a plumbing invoice." The lake remained frozen along the shore into March. Snow gathered against the closed north wing, and Owen insisted on checking the roof after every heavy fall. Martha checked his invoices with equal dedication. The temporary protection held through the first thaw. Water ran through cleared gutters instead of down the dining room wall. Martha stood inside during a hard rain and watched the old stain remain dry. She called Owen. "It isn't leaking." "I know." How do you know? I'm on the roof." Martha stepped closer to the window and looked up. One boot was visible beyond the eave. "Get down. I'm inspecting flashing." "In rain?" "It started after I got up here. The weather report started before you did. You sound like my sister. Your sister is probably tired." He laughed, and the boot disappeared. The manager's quarters took longer than its size justified. The cracked supply line was simple. The soft bathroom floor was not. Once the tub came out, Owen found damaged subflooring and a joist that required repair. The electrician added dedicated circuits for the kitchenette. A proper smoke-rated separation was installed between the apartment and office. Martha's 6-week stay at Pineway became 12, then 16. She renegotiated the rate twice. The motel owner began avoiding the office when he saw her carrying maintenance notes. The storage company mailed notice that Daniel's 6 paid months would soon end. Martha walked through the unit one cold afternoon and realized she had spent money preserving furniture for rooms she no longer possessed. Her old bedroom set was too large for the manager's quarters. The glass front hutch had nowhere to stand. 4 boxes contained serving dishes used once a year because Walter considered paper plates evidence of decline. Martha sold the bedroom furniture to a woman furnishing a Lakeside rental. The hutch went to Nina, who paid in 3 installments despite Martha offering a lower price. "I don't accept pity discounts," Nina said. "It wasn't pity. It has a scratch down one side. That's character. That's what sellers call damage." The serving dishes brought less than Martha expected. The empty storage unit cost her nothing, which felt like income. She kept Walter's cardigan, the chipped blue mug, 2 framed photographs, her mother's ring, and the Bible. Everything else had to justify the space it occupied. The manager's quarters passed its occupancy inspection in April. Martha received the approval by email while standing in room 2 with a paint roller. Nina read it over her shoulder and shouted so loudly that Luis dropped a level in the corridor. "Nothing happened," Martha called. "You can move in. That is not nothing," Nina said. It took 1 station wagon load. Clothes, kitchen utensils, records, linens, photographs, and the boxes she had carried from Pineway. Nina brought a plant from the cafe that leaned permanently left. Owen installed a handrail by the apartment's exterior step and claimed it had always been in the estimate. It was not. It should have been. "Then I am not paying for your mistake." "You're not." Martha looked at him. "I had extra material," he said. "From what job?" "One with a client less suspicious than you." She accepted the rail. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and new caulk. Its kitchenette cabinets were still almond-colored, but they closed. The bathroom floor no longer flexed. Martha's narrow bed fit with 7 inches between its foot and the wall. She placed Walter's Bible on the small mantel above the electric fireplace. Not in a drawer. The warranty deed remained locked with her documents. The certified distribution record rested in Ruth's office file, and another copy in Martha's metal box. The book looked smaller than the damage it had caused. Her first evening at Cedar Wake was quieter than Pineway and noisier than any house. The wind pressed against the east windows, pipes clicked inside repaired walls, ice shifted along the shoreline with a sound like distant glass breaking. At 10, the desk bell rang once. Martha froze in bed. A second ring followed. She took her flashlight and stepped into the office. The lobby beyond was empty. The bell rang a 3rd time while she watched. A mouse emerged from behind the brochure rack, climbed onto the desk, and leaned against the bell with both front paws. Martha stared at it. "You have made a poor choice," she said. The mouse fled. Owen set traps the next morning and sealed a gap behind the filing cabinets. "What did you think it was?" Nina asked. "A mouse." "Before you saw it, a trespasser." "You didn't think it was Walter?" If Walter's spirit returned, it would avoid the front desk. Daniel visited the following Sunday. He arrived without calling and stood outside the west entrance holding a cardboard box. "I found these in the garage," he said. Inside were 2 green metal cash boxes, an adding machine cover, and a package of unused Cedar Wake postcards. None had monetary value. Dad must have taken them home at some point. Martha lifted a postcard. It showed the inn in summer, before the trim faded. Thank you. Daniel looked past her into the lobby. The fireplace had been cleaned. Drop cloths covered part of the floor. A new emergency light hung above the south corridor. It looks the same, he said. It is expensive to make old buildings look unchanged. Can I see the rooms? Only the cleared areas. He followed her through the 6-room route. Martha explained the separation wall, exits, electrical work, and revised bathroom plan. Daniel listened without photographing anything. In room 6, he looked out toward the lake. I slept here once, he said. You remember? Now I do. Grandpa snored in the next room. I put a pillow over the floor vent because I thought the sound came through it. Did it help? No. The room got cold. Martha smoothed a drop cloth over the windowsill. Your family's approach to building maintenance may be hereditary. He smiled, then became serious. I got an offer on the house. Are you accepting it? Probably. Is it enough? It pays what I need. There were many questions Martha could have asked. Whether the agent had photographed the pale marks left by Walter's hospital bed, whether the buyers liked the kitchen, whether Daniel had cleaned the refrigerator as she had. She asked none. I hope closing goes smoothly, she said. That's all? What would you like? I don't know. He looked around the unfinished room. I thought you'd care more. I cared for 15 years. That's not what I meant. It may be what I mean. Daniel nodded slowly. Luis had left 2 flat-packed bedside tables in the lobby. Daniel noticed them. Do those need assembling? Yes, I can do that. Can you? His eyebrow rose unevenly. You're not the only person Dad underestimated. Martha gave him a screwdriver. He stayed for 3 hours. One table wobbled until Martha pointed out a bracket installed backward. Daniel fixed it without argument. Nina arrived with cinnamon rolls left from the cafe and found him sitting on the lobby floor surrounded by screws. You remembered, she said when he took one. I remembered the smell. These aren't the old recipe. Daniel chewed thoughtfully. They're better. Nina looked offended on behalf of history, then pleased on behalf of herself. Before leaving, Daniel placed the remaining postcards on the front desk. You should use them, he said. The picture is 40 years old. The lake hasn't changed. The room rates have. He shrugged. Right on the back. Elaine suggested mailing the cards to former guests. Martha refused to use old addresses without checking them, so Elaine spent 2 afternoons calling people she still knew. Some numbers were dead. One man had moved to Arizona. Another remembered Cedar Wake but no longer traveled. A woman named Susan Bell answered Elaine's call and asked whether the inn was truly reopening. She and her husband had stayed every August for 9 years before Cedar Wake closed. Martha telephoned her personally. We will have 6 rooms, she explained. No public dining room, no boat rental, and no promise that the north wing will ever return. Will there be coffee on the porch? Susan asked. If the porch passes final inspection. And breakfast? Limited. Are the rooms clean? They will be. Then I don't need the other things. Susan reserved room 2 for 3 nights in August. Martha took the credit card information through the new booking system, read the cancellation terms aloud, and processed the deposit. The receipt printed behind the desk with a mechanical hum. $180. It would not cover a mattress. It would not pay a week of interest or repair a foot of porch. If the inn failed to open, Martha would have to return it. Still, she held the receipt for a moment before filing it. It was the first money Cedar Wake had earned in 6 years, without lying to anyone about what came next. Martha pinned a copy of the receipt above the office desk. Nina saw it the next morning. You framed our first deposit with a thumbtack. It is not framed, it's displayed. It is awaiting reconciliation. Joy hates accounting language. Joy has never survived an audit. More reservations followed, though not in a flood. Elaine's calls produced 2 former guests willing to return. Nina persuaded the local tourism office to list Cedar Wake as reopening with limited rooms. A simple website went live with current photographs showing the weathered building honestly. Martha rejected an edited image that made the trim greener and the lake brighter. If people arrive expecting July and May, she said, they will blame me for weather. The website listed 6 rooms, continental breakfast, porch access, no restaurant, no boats, no public events, and no access to the closed north wing. The phrase limited reopening appeared twice. Telephone inquiries revealed that people read selectively. Do you host weddings? One woman asked. No. What about a very small wedding? No, 40 people. That is not very small, and it is still a wedding. A man wanted to know whether he could bring 3 large dogs into one room. Another asked if the inn had an elevator, a hot tub, and gluten-free waffles. We have stairs, a lake, and breakfast that has not yet been defined, Martha told him. He did not reserve. By the end of May, 11 nights had deposits attached. The total was modest, but the dates spread across June, July, and August. Martin called the pattern encouraging but insufficient. Martha called it exactly what it was. Outside, Owen and Luis replaced damaged porch boards and rebuilt the leaking corner. Owen no longer climbed every ladder himself. He measured from below, checked Luis's cuts, and complained about modern screws. Luis ignored most of the complaints and absorbed the useful parts. Water follows weakness, Owen told him while they examined the porch roof. Water follows gravity. Gravity finds weakness. Martha wrote the phrase beside her maintenance reserve. When Owen saw it, he said, "That was construction advice. It is now budgeting advice." The 6 rooms took shape without becoming luxurious. Warm cream walls, cleaned oak headboards, plain white sheets, washable quilts in muted green and blue. Nina placed small cedar branches in glass jars until Martha pointed out that guests might believe they were decorations and knock them over. They are decorations. They shed. They smell good. So does coffee. Coffee stays in cups. Elaine found 6 framed lake photographs from Cedar Wake's earlier years. Martha allowed one in each room after confirming the frames did not contain insects, broken glass, or handwritten claims of historic importance. Room 6 received a photograph of the dock during a winter sunrise. It should have summer, Elaine said. It is an upstairs room with good insulation. Winter is aspirational. Sometimes I don't know when you're joking. Neither did Walter. Elaine went quiet. Martha regretted the remark but did not apologize immediately. Walter's name still entered a room and rearranged the furniture. Later, she found Elaine in the lobby polishing the brass bell. I shouldn't use him to end conversations, Martha said. Elaine continued rubbing the bell with a soft cloth. He used himself to end plenty. That doesn't make it fair. No. They stood together at the desk. I still miss him, Elaine said. So do I. I'm angry whenever I miss him. That seems efficient. 2 emotions for the price of 1. Elaine smiled without looking up. The porch passed its structural inspection. The electrical inspector approved the active guest room circuits and emergency lighting. Plumbing passed after a shutoff valve failed during the first pressure test and sprayed Luis from shoulder to ankle. Nina handed him a towel. You look refreshed. I look employed. The fire inspection was less generous. The inspector walked the designated guest route twice, measured the upstairs landing, tested alarms, and examined the separation from the closed wing. He approved Owen's barrier, then stopped at the east exit, serving the upper rooms. The exterior stair descended to the porch section nearest the old leak. Owen had repaired the visible damage, but the inspector wanted additional support beneath the egress path and a change to the handrail spacing before he would approve overnight occupancy upstairs. How long? Martha asked. Owen looked under the porch, then at Luis. 8 working days if materials arrive. And cost? He gave a range. Martha stared at the lower number until it failed to improve. Without upstairs rooms 6 and 8, she would open with 4. 4 did not meet her minimum plan. The first June reservation began in 12 days. Can we open the ground floor rooms and add upstairs later? Nina asked. Yes, the inspector said, if the approved occupancy, emergency plan, and booking records reflect 4 rooms. Martha thought of the spreadsheet she had rebuilt after losing rooms 4 and 5. Another reduction would make every fixed cost heavier. She did not ask the inspector to reconsider. His job was to decide whether strangers could escape a burning building, not whether Martha could make a loan payment. Do the support work, she told Owen. Your reserve will become smaller. Martin objected when she requested a final draw adjustment. You are using nearly all the construction contingency. That is what contingencies are for. They are also for things you haven't found yet. If you know what they are no longer contingencies. He pinched the bridge of his nose. How will you cover operating cash, room deposits, pension income if necessary, and delayed owner draws? You cannot keep solving business problems with personal income. I am not. I am bridging a delayed inspection with personal income. Those sentences have begun to resemble each other. Martha knew he was right. That made him irritating. She reduced the first linen order, postponed exterior painting, and sold the unused banquet china, 3 chafing dishes, and 2 heavy lounge chairs that required more floor space than comfort justified. Elaine protested the china until Martha asked if she wanted to buy service for $84. Elaine bought 12 place settings and stopped protesting. The combined sales covered most of the added porch materials. Martha postponed replacing the office carpet and kept the stain beneath the desk where no guest would see it unless they arrived to inspect her shoes. The kitchen created a different problem. Its hood and range could not be used without costly fire suppression upgrades. The refrigeration passed after repair, the sinks met requirements, and the preparation surfaces were sound, but cooking on the old range was out. Nina proposed supplying baked goods from her licensed cafe. Cedar Wake could serve coffee, fruit, yogurt, cold cereal, and items prepared and packaged at Nina's kitchen. Martha could offer oatmeal made with an approved countertop unit if the health inspector accepted the procedure. No eggs, Elaine asked. No. No bacon? No. What kind of inn doesn't serve eggs? A solvent one. The health inspector reviewed their plan, required a separate hand-washing sink to remain unobstructed, corrected Nina's proposed labeling, and approved limited breakfast service. The range received a red tag and remained off. Nina drafted a menu titled Cedar Wake Morning Table. Martha crossed out table and wrote breakfast. You destroy poetry, Nina said. I prevent guests from expecting table service. You will serve them. I will set out food. The distinction has payroll consequences. Owen and Louise finished the porch supports 1 day before the promised 8. The fire inspector returned, tested the doors again, and approved all 6 rooms. Then room 2's new smoke detector began chirping. Everyone looked up. The inspector removed it, checked the battery, and discovered a defective unit. The electrician replaced it from his truck. Martha did not breathe normally until the inspector signed the form. You can exhale, Nina told her. I am conserving air. Daniel called that evening while Martha was carrying folded towels upstairs. The house closed, he said. She stopped on the landing. It's sold? Yes. The buyers signed this afternoon. How do you feel? I don't know. Relieved. Awful. Mostly tired. Martha sat on the step. Did you get what you needed? Enough to pay off my mortgage and put something aside. That's good. They're taking down the wallpaper in the front bedroom. You hated that wallpaper. I did. So did Walter. I know. Neither spoke for a few seconds. I found one of your bank boxes in the basement, Daniel said. Old statements and motel records. I can bring it. Don't throw it away. I won't. Thank you. He cleared his throat. When do you open? June 17th, if nothing else develops an opinion. Could I come? You may reserve a room. I meant for the opening. There is no ceremony. Guests arrive. We give them keys. They complain about pillows. You know what I mean? Martha shifted the towels onto her lap. You can come by, but I'll be working. All right. And Daniel? Yes? I'm glad the house sale gave you enough. He took a moment to answer. I'm sorry it gave you nothing. It gave me clarity. That sounds like something Ruth would charge for. Martha laughed softly. She did. The corrected occupancy certificate arrived the following morning. The lodging license followed after its final review. The health approval for limited breakfast went into a clear sleeve beside the red tag notice, forbidding use of the range. Martha posted every required document behind the office desk. She checked fire extinguishers, emergency numbers, room locks, water temperatures, reservation balances, payroll setup, tax accounts, and the cancellation policy. Nina inspected towels for loose threads. Elaine arranged the 6 lake photographs for the 3rd time. Owen and Luis removed their tools from the lobby, leaving pale rectangles in the dust where cases had stood. You're done? Martha asked. With this list, Owen said, there will be another. There's always another. He handed her the final carpentry invoice. It matched the revised estimate. Martha looked at him. Exactly? I wanted to see whether it would frighten you. It does. Owen smiled. On the evening before the first guests were due, Martha stood at the west entrance with the new room keys lined across the desk. The brass bell shone beside them. Beyond the eastern windows, late sunlight lay across Lake Maren, and the rebuilt porch held its own shadow. 6 rooms were licensed. 6 beds were made. The north wing remained sealed, the dining room mural remained stained, and the office carpet remained ugly. Martha turned the deadbolt, tested it once, then turned it back. For the first time since Cedar Wake closed, the door was unlocked because someone was expected. The first person through the unlocked door was not a guest. Elaine arrived at 7:30 carrying a vase of peonies large enough to obscure her face. You cannot put those in a guest room, Martha said. They're for the desk. People are allergic. To peonies? To things? Elaine lowered the vase. Where would you like them? Dining room, far end, away from food. You could simply say thank you. I could, but then you might bring more. Nina entered behind her with 2 bakery crates and a carton of coffee beans. Good morning to everyone except the person blocking the door with vegetation. Elaine moved. The first check-in was not until 3, but preparation occupied every available hour. Nina labeled refrigerator shelves and arranged packaged muffins, yogurt, fruit, and cereal. Elaine polished glassware that would not be used. Martha verified room temperatures, tested locks, and placed printed emergency information beside each telephone. At 10, Owen and Luis arrived for what Owen called a final look, and Martha called an unrequested inspection. Owen pressed on the rebuilt porch railing. It held yesterday, Martha said. Yesterday didn't lean on it. Neither should guests. Guests lean. It's in their nature. Luis checked the east steps and found one screw head sitting slightly proud. He tightened it before Martha could decide whether it mattered. Now we're done, Owen said. You said that last week. I was younger and hopeful. Martha handed him the maintenance schedule she had drafted. Monthly exterior checks, seasonal roof inspections, gutter cleaning, water shutoff locations, room-by-room service notes, and emergency contacts for licensed trades. Owen read the first page. You made a schedule for checking the schedule. That line says annual review. Luis took the pages. I understand it. Of course you do, Owen said. You're young enough to trust paper. Luis had agreed to handle routine maintenance calls when Owen was unavailable, with work approved in advance except for emergencies. Owen would still inspect the cedar exterior and roof before winter. Martha had wanted one dependable person. She had gained 2, which meant she now received competing opinions in stereo. Daniel arrived at noon holding the bank box from the old house. He wore jeans and a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had brought no folder. I thought I'd come before you got busy. I've been busy since October. You know what I meant. He set the box in the office. Inside were motel payroll summaries, old tax returns, and notebooks from Martha's years at Briar Motor Lodge. She had forgotten how neatly she once wrote before Walter's medication schedules took over her hands. "Where did you find it?" "Basement shelf behind the furnace filters. I told Walter not to put records near the furnace. He apparently respected that enough to put them behind it." Daniel looked through the office doorway. Nina was explaining the coffee maker to Elaine, who insisted she had operated more complicated equipment in the 70s. "It feels strange," he said. "What does?" "People here. There are 4. You know what I mean." Martha looked at him. "Yes." He walked to the front desk and touched the brass bell with one finger, but did not ring it. "I kept thinking Dad would fix this place someday," he said. "Even after I forgot he owned it." Walter thought someday was a form of financing. "Did you ever believe him?" "About what?" "Anything he said he'd do later." Martha considered the question. "Yes," she said. "That was part of loving him." Daniel nodded as though the answer had cost what he expected. Elaine emerged from the dining room. "You stayed. For a while. You can carry the old beverage dispenser to storage." Daniel looked at Martha. "She has no authority," Martha said, "but the dispenser does need moving." He carried it. At 1:20, a silver sedan stopped at the west entrance. A woman in khaki pants and a wide-brimmed hat stepped out, studied the building, and opened the rear door for a pair of binoculars. Martha checked the reservation screen. "That's Diane Rusk," she said. "Room 1. She's early." Nina glanced at the clock. "Room 1 is ready. Check-in is 3. The woman has binoculars. She can read the sign." Diane entered carrying a small suitcase and apologized for arriving early. She had driven from Eau Claire to watch migrating warblers along the northern shore, but rain had changed her plans. "If the room isn't ready, I can sit somewhere," she said. "The room is ready," Martha replied. "We are not." Diane smiled. "That sounds honest." Martha verified identification, processed the balance, explained breakfast in the closed wing, and handed over the first room key Cedar Wake had issued in 6 years. Diane accepted it without understanding the weight of the moment. Why should she? She was paying for a clean room, not participating in Martha's symbolism. "Is the porch open?" she asked. "Yes. The marked section only. Please don't move the chairs beyond the railing line." "Understood. And if you see loose birds indoors, tell me before Nina." Nina looked offended. "Why me? You would feed them." Diane laughed and carried her suitcase toward room 1. Martha watched until the door closed. Daniel stood near the fireplace. "You did it. She hasn't taken a shower yet." At 2:15, Diane returned to report that the shower produced hot water. "See?" Daniel said after she left. "One fixture is not an audit." The next arrivals were Paul and Marianne Foster, a couple from Madison who had reserved room 6 because of its lake view. Paul looked at the staircase and rubbed one knee. "I thought this was ground floor," he said. "The listing states upstairs." Marianne turned on him. "I told you to read it." "I read. You looked at photographs." Martha offered room 3 on the ground floor, which had the same rate but a partial view. Paul accepted. Marianne asked whether room 3's mattress was as new as room 6's. "They were delivered the same day," Martha said. "Then we've improved our situation." As Nina reset the room assignment, the toilet in room 2 began running. Not leaking. Running. The distinction mattered, though the sound made Martha equally unhappy. She turned the local shutoff valve. It held. The plumbing contractor answered and promised to send someone within the hour. Room 2's guest had not arrived, so Martha blocked it in the booking system and prepared room 7 as an alternative. "You aren't panicking," Elaine said. "I'm scheduling." "I would be panicking." "You are." Quietly, for once. The plumber replaced a defective fill valve and tested the toilet 3 times. Martha documented the service call and unblocked the room 8 minutes before its guests arrived. They were 2 sisters in their 50s, Gail and Sandra Webb, traveling together after attending a pottery workshop. Gail asked if the inn had ghosts. Sandra asked if it had wine. "No ghosts on payroll," Martha said. No liquor license. Nina's cafe sells bottled wine to go until 6. Sandra looked at her watch and hurried back outside. By 5, 4 rooms were occupied. A 5th reservation had canceled 2 days earlier under the posted terms. Room 8 remained empty. Martha's spreadsheet had predicted 3 occupied rooms for the first night. She permitted herself to notice the improvement for nearly 10 seconds. Then the Wi-Fi stopped working. Paul Foster reported it while standing in the lobby holding his phone upright. It says, "Connected with no internet." Martha checked the office computer. Same result. Nina crouched beside the router. Should I unplug it? No, that usually works. Wait. Martha telephoned the provider. After 12 minutes of recorded music, the technician confirmed a regional outage affecting the Western Shore. Estimated restoration was 2 hours. Paul looked wounded. We were going to stream a movie. Martha offered DVDs from Cedar Wake's old collection. Most were romantic comedies released before phones could stream anything. Marianne selected one, starring 2 actors whose names no one remembered. We came to a lake. She told her husband, "We can survive without knowing what everyone else is doing." The internet returned in 43 minutes. At 6, Nina directed guests toward 3 local restaurants and her cafe. Elaine wanted to remain for the evening, but Martha sent her home. "You've worked all day. I arranged flowers and polished glasses. You also supervised Daniel carrying one object. He needed direction." Daniel had stayed until the last arrival. Before leaving, he stood beside Martha at the west entrance. "I expected something bigger," he said. "You're looking at 12 rooms. I mean today. A ribbon. People." Elaine making a speech no one requested. "It's an inn, Daniel. Opening means strangers need towels." He smiled. Dad would have made a speech. Yes. Probably about his vision. Yes. And forgotten to order towels. Almost certainly. They looked across the lobby. Diane sat near the east windows with a bird guide open on her lap. The Foster couple was debating restaurants. Nina was writing the next morning's muffin count on a clipboard. Daniel put his hands in his pockets. "I was wrong about you staying in the house," he said. Martha did not move. "I told myself it was money," he continued. "Insurance, taxes, the sale. It was easier if you were a problem with a deadline. You didn't see the years before the deadline. No, you chose not to." Yes. The admission stood between them without asking to be forgiven. "I can't fix that," he said. "No. I'm sorry." Martha looked at Walter's son, at the uneven lift of his eyebrows, and the discomfort he had not escaped by leaving. "Thank you for saying it plainly," she said. "It was not absolution." Daniel seemed to understand. After he left, rain began. The first drops darkened the porch boards. Wind moved across the lake, turning its surface from blue-gray to iron. Martha checked weather alerts. No severe warning, only steady rain overnight. By 9, the building had settled into guest sounds. A television behind room 3's door, footsteps overhead, water moving through pipes, Sandra Webb laughing at something in room 2. Nina finished the breakfast setup list and removed her apron. "You should sleep," she said. "I will. You're going to inspect every gutter. I can see the relevant ones from inside." That wasn't a denial. Nina left by the west entrance. Martha locked it at 10, leaving guests with their exterior access instructions. She walked the approved corridors once, checked the north wing barrier, and stood in the dining room watching rain strike the tall windows. The old water stain remained dry. In her apartment, Walter's Bible sat above the electric fireplace. Martha opened it to Proverbs, where the deed had rested for years. The pages bore no message, only a softened line along the binding and a verse Walter had underlined long before she knew him. She closed the book without reading it. At 11:30, someone walked across the porch. Martha listened until the steps returned indoors. At 12:15, room 6 flushed its toilet. At 1, wind rattled the dining room window, but no water entered. She slept in intervals. Before dawn, Martha woke to silence and lay still, trying to identify what had disturbed her. Then she heard a door open overhead, careful footsteps on the stairs, and the faint click of the east entrance. A guest was going out to meet the morning. Martha rose, pulled on her cardigan, and went to start the coffee. The coffee maker took longer than it had during practice runs. Martha stood in the commercial kitchen watching the dark stream strike the glass pot, as if attention could make it move faster. Outside, the rain had stopped. A pale line of light showed above Lake Maren. Nina arrived at 5:50 carrying fresh muffins. "You're early," Martha said. "So are you. I live here. That is not a defense against being early." They set out breakfast together. Coffee, tea, yogurt, fruit, oatmeal, cold cereal, and muffins, labeled according to the health inspector's requirements. Nina moved the blueberry basket toward the front. "Bran deserves an equal opportunity," Martha said. "Bran has had decades to improve its reputation." The east door opened. Diane Rusk entered from the porch with damp cuffs and excitement in her face. "Blackburnian warbler," she said, "right by the old dock." Martha looked toward the gray lawn. "Is that good? It's wonderful. Then congratulations." Diane poured coffee and carried it back outside. By 6:30, the building was awake. Water moved through pipes. The stairs creaked beneath careful footsteps. Sandra Webb rang the desk bell to ask where Nina had bought the muffins, though Nina stood 6 feet away wearing an apron with the cafe's name across it. Paul Foster reported that he had slept well. Marianne said he snored. "The mattress did its job," Martha replied. "I cannot warranty the person on it." Owen appeared at 7 after driving past and deciding the porch required inspection following the rain. He found one section of railing with a slight movement and tightened it while guests ate nearby. "You said it passed," Martha told him. "It did." "Then why are you touching it?" "Because passing is not permanent." She added that to her maintenance philosophy despite refusing to tell him. Elaine arrived with an old photograph beneath her arm. It showed Cedar Wake's dock in the 1960s, crowded with wooden boats and adults dressed too formally for water. Gail and Sandra studied it while Elaine identified her parents, Walter and herself. "Which one are you?" Sandra asked. The girl pretending not to be afraid of the canoe. "You look furious." "I was terrified. In my family, they photographed the same." Martha carried a fresh pot of coffee through the east doors. The lake had turned silver beneath the lifting cloud. Rainwater shone on the rebuilt porch boards. Diane stood at the railing with binoculars. Owen knelt near the post with his wrench. Nina moved between the breakfast room and kitchen, checking supplies. Elaine held the photograph between the Webb sisters while pointing toward the modern dock beyond the lawn. No one cheered. No one called Martha brave. A guest asked where to leave a used coffee cup, and Martha showed her. That was how Cedar Wake returned. Not as Walter had imagined it, but as 6 clean rooms, paid work, ordinary questions, and coffee carried onto a porch that held. The first checkout produced a complaint about water pressure in room 3 and a compliment about the sheets. Diane left a $5 tip for Nina and wrote "Warbler from porch" on the guest comment card. Paul and Marianne reserved another weekend in September before driving away. Martha entered every dollar, fee, tax, and refund. The first month did not transform her circumstances. Weekdays were uneven. 2 nights passed with only 1 occupied room. A rainy weekend filled 5 rooms after campers abandoned tents, but the following Tuesday remained empty. Laundry cost more than projected. Breakfast waste improved after Nina stopped ordering bran muffins. Martha took no owner draw. She paid Nina for every scheduled hour. She made the bank payment, the county installment, and Owen's lien payment on time. When cash tightened, she delayed replacing the office carpet again. Guests liked the porch more than the rooms. They complained about mosquitoes, weak cellular service, and the absence of eggs. Martha supplied fans, directions, and the same answer about breakfast each time. "You could buy an electric griddle," Elaine said. "Not under the approved plan. It plugs into a wall. So does a space heater. I don't fry bacon on that either." Luis learned Cedar Wake's shutoffs, roof valleys, and seasonal noises. Owen supervised less often and criticized with greater efficiency. By July, Luis handled routine calls while Owen came twice a month for the exterior. The well pump failed on the hottest Friday of the season. It did not fail dramatically. Water pressure simply weakened, coughed, and stopped while 5 rooms were occupied. Martha called the licensed well contractor, whose number was posted beside the office phone. Nina delivered bottled water from the cafe. The contractor confirmed what the winter inspection had warned. The pump had reached its end. Replacement consumed most of the operating reserve. Martha offered guests a refund for the affected night. 3 accepted partial adjustments. 1 couple left. Diane Rusk, back for another birding weekend, shrugged and said she had camped with less. Water returned by evening. Martin reviewed the expense on Monday and used the phrase, expected, unexpected event. That phrase should be illegal, Martha told him. Would you prefer pump failure? It is at least specific. Cedar Wake survived the week. August bookings remained strong enough to rebuild part of the reserve. The north wing stayed closed. Martha never stopped noticing it when she crossed the lobby, but she stopped treating the sealed corridor as an accusation. Susan Bell and her husband Arthur arrived on a warm afternoon carrying 1 suitcase between them. Susan stood in the lobby for several seconds before speaking. The sofas used to face the other way. They may again when moving them is free, Martha said. Susan laughed. You must be Martha. They stayed in room 2. Susan remembered Nina immediately and Elaine after a longer look. On the porch, the 3 women compared the old photograph with the lake in front of them. Cedar Wake is smaller now, Susan said. The building is the same size, Elaine replied. You know what I mean? Martha did. Susan and Arthur did not expect the old dining room or canoe rentals. They drank coffee, walked the lawn, and spent 2 evenings reading on the porch. Before leaving, they reserved the same August dates for the following year. By then, Martha's 6-room plan had earned enough to prove it could support itself during the season. It had not earned enough to restore the north wing, replace the entire porch, or remove the word limited from anything. After operating costs and required payments, the margin was modest. Martha transferred her first owner draw in late August. It was less than 1 month of her old motel bookkeeping salary. She printed the transaction receipt and filed it beside Cedar Wake's first reservation deposit. Daniel's request arrived before Labor Day. Aunt Elaine says some of the family may come up for the weekend. Could you hold 3 rooms for us? We wouldn't need regular service, so there shouldn't be much cost. Martha read the message twice. She prepared a reply containing room rates, taxes, cancellation terms, check-in hours, and the required deposits. She explained that all occupied rooms received the same housekeeping and safety service. Then she sent it. Daniel called 7 minutes later. You're charging us full rate? Yes, it's family. The rooms are a business. We wouldn't expect breakfast. It is included. We can make our own beds. That does not reduce insurance, laundry, utilities, payroll, or the payment due to the bank. He was silent. Aunt Elaine called it a family weekend, he said. Elaine pays for the cedar chest she bought. That's different, only because the cedar chest doesn't need clean towels. Daniel exhaled. Dad would have let us stay. Walter gave away things other people maintained. That's harsh. It is accurate. What does family mean to you now, Martha? The question was too large for the conversation and too honest to dismiss. It means you may call me without an appointment, she said. It means I will tell you the truth before it becomes expensive. It does not mean my work is free. Daniel did not answer immediately. Then he asked, Is room 6 available Saturday? It is. One night? Yes, book it for me. I need a deposit. A disbelieving laugh escaped him. Of course you do. He paid it. The larger family gathering never materialized. Elaine blamed conflicting schedules. Martha suspected conflicting expectations. Daniel arrived alone on Saturday, carried his bag upstairs, and returned 20 minutes later to report that room 6 still had the same floor vent. Did you cover it with a pillow? I considered it. That evening, he sat beside Elaine on the porch while she told two guests how their grandfather had expanded the north wing too quickly. Daniel corrected one detail. Elaine corrected his correction. Martha left them to it. At checkout, Daniel paid his balance and placed cash in Nina's tip envelope. You didn't have to do that, Nina said. I'm told work isn't free. Martha looked at him. He lifted one shoulder. Some lessons are expensive. Before leaving, he handed Martha the room key rather than placing it on the desk. Dad would have liked it here, he said. He did like it here. He would have liked what you did. Martha closed her fingers around the key. He might have objected to the limited breakfast. He objected to limits. Yes. Daniel looked toward the south corridor. Do you think you'll ever open the rest? Not until the building earns the right. That sounds like you. It sounds like bookkeeping. He nodded. I'll call before Thanksgiving. We don't have Thanksgiving. Maybe we could. Martha did not promise. She did not refuse. The season softened after Labor Day. Weekends still brought guests, but weekday vacancies spread across the reservation screen. Martha reduced Nina's scheduled hours as they had agreed. Nina accepted the change and began negotiating for a raise the next summer. You've become demanding, Martha said. I learned from management. Owen's lien balance declined on schedule. The county received every installment. Martin's trout tie returned for a quarterly review in which he described Cedar Wake's performance as cautiously viable. Martha wrote the phrase at the top of next year's budget. Elaine wanted to discuss paint colors for the exterior. Owen wanted the roof reserve increased first. Nina wanted better pillows. Luis wanted a separate maintenance binder because Martha's main one had become too heavy. They gathered around a dining room table one Sunday evening after the last September guests checked out. Papers, coffee cups, repair estimates, and a plate of Nina's blueberry muffins occupied the surface. What about the north wing? Elaine asked. Closed next year, Martha said. You could repair rooms 4 and 5. When the reserve covers them without endangering the 6 we have. Elaine opened her mouth, then closed it. Owen nodded. Roof first. Pillows first, Nina said. Bender first, Luis added. Martha wrote all 3 into separate columns. From the east windows, Lake Maren held the pale gold of late afternoon. The porch trim still needed paint. The dining room mural still carried its old stain. In the office, Walter's reopening plans remained filed beneath the actual accounts, and his Bible rested on the mantel in Martha's apartment without a deed hidden inside it. The building had not made her rich. It had given her payments, laundry, interrupted sleep, and a private set of rooms no one could empty with a polite notice. More than that, it had given her a table where disagreement did not mean erasure. Nina carried the coffee onto the porch. Owen followed, arguing with Luis about gutters. Elaine took the old lake photograph with her. Martha closed the ledger, turned off the office light, and walked through the east doors. Across the wet lawn, the dock reached into the evening water. Her old station wagon stood at the end of the gravel drive, in the same place where she had once held a folded deed against her chest and wondered what Walter had left unfinished. Nina had saved the last chair. Martha sat down among them and accepted a cup of coffee while Cedar Wake settled around the life they had chosen to keep.